I'm about to yap about SpongeBob for 3 hours by compiling my best videos so that you can fall asleep. Or, I mean, you can actively watch the whole thing. I don't really care what you do while watching this video. From looking at every time SpongeBob changed its animation style to some of the most random facts about SpongeBob. But let's start by doing something fun. This is every episode of SpongeBob that has scenes that were deleted from the show. And today, we're going over all of them, starting off with the episode Shanghaired. This one wasted no time, as the intro to this episode is often not found in reruns. The original episode starts off with Patchy the Pirate saying that he will watch his favorite episode. Then he gets launched out of a cannon by Potty. The extended version also shows the aftermath, with a burnt Patchy coming back with his usual positive attitude. And the line,
"Well, roll the cartoon."
Continuing into the episode, SpongeBob and Squidward's houses both get smashed by an anchor. In response to this, both of them, along with Patrick, climb the rope to find themselves aboard the Flying Dutchman ship. Now, this was no ordinary ship, of course, and was home to the Dutchman ghost, who tried to scare the trio. This fails miserably and earns Squidward a scorching, followed by a trip to the Fly of Despair. Now, in my opinion, this should have been the scene to be edited, but Nickelodeon decided that that was perfectly okay. He then curses the other two to a lifetime of service to him as his crew. SpongeBob and Patrick's plan was to help horrify the citizens of Bikini Bottom, but it doesn't go according to plan, leading to scenes such as this. Just as SpongeBob and Patrick start loving their new jobs, the Dutchman decides that he got enough of this run. He immediately informs the pair that he intends to eat them. They obviously weren't fond of this idea, so they escaped through the dreaded perfume department. Once they're successful, they steal the Dutchman's dining socks, as he doesn't eat without them. In the fight that ensues, the Dutchman poses a deal in exchange for the sock. He will grant them 3 wishes. Here's where the magic happens, as in the edited episode, the first 2 wishes are wasted, and SpongeBob uses the final wish to get out. But when Shanghaired had first aired, the 3rd wish was actually left up to the audience in a phone voting system. But that's not all, as there were alternative endings too. In one ending, Squidward gets the final say, and he wishes that he had never met SpongeBob and Patrick. This, however, backfires on him. In the other ending, Patrick wishes for gum as his final wish in a very classic dumb Patrick move. But while this was a good episode, this next one took the amount of deleted and altered scenes to a whole nother level, while also staying relatable. I'm talking about the episode Procrastination. This episode has not 1, not 2, but 3 deleted scenes. The episode starts with SpongeBob needing to write an essay for class, but he ends up getting distracted by his friends playing outside. Things only get worse as SpongeBob starts doing every other task except for the essay. Things hit a peak when SpongeBob enters a lucid state, suddenly seeing all of his possessions conspiring against him and his work. He watches as a flame lights up his house, burning the paper as well. Thankfully, he soon wakes up realizing that this was all part of a nightmare, but not everything was solved, as SpongeBob realizes that it was 5 minutes before class. He speedruns the assignment, making the deadline, but what he doesn't realize is that the class was canceled, and all of his efforts were in vain as the episode closed. Now, as relatable as all this was, what die-hard fans realized is that in the original, there were 3 scenes that were quietly scrubbed from the episode. The first one is when SpongeBob is distracted by his friends playing. In the original clip, there was actually a shot of Patrick rubbing sunscreen on Sandy's back. It was deemed suggestive and edited out. The second one is even more bizarre. When SpongeBob fantasizes about what would happen after he finishes the essay, this clip was shown. It was meant to be a joke for the running gag that SpongeBob always crashes when he takes his boating test. Apparently, it was this time that the editors felt that kids might reenact it in real life. But to top it all off comes the weirdest scene. In one of the tasks he does to avoid the essay, SpongeBob exercises, and it led to this scene. But this was also considered suggestive, and had to be cut out. But in the end, SpongeBob thankfully got his essay done. But now, let's talk about the next deleted scenes in the episode Just One Bite. Just how far could one go to get a Krabby Patty? Well, Squidward's about to answer that in the deleted scene we're about to look at. The episode starts off like any other in the Krusty Krab. Squidward was was, as usual, hating his job. He says that he hates Krabby Patties, despite never actually trying one. A loyal SpongeBob then tries to get him a Krabby Patty, and after some fighting, Squidward finally takes a bite of one. Squidward's opinion on the Krabby Patty seems to remain unchanged, as he angrily says that the Krabby Patty was the worst food he has ever eaten.
Krabby Patty may be the most horrible, putrid, disgusting excuse for a sandwich to have slither down my throat,
and buries the patty to its death. But when SpongeBob leaves being defeated, Squidward desperately digs up the patty and eats the remains. As the realization hits, he is no better than the rest of them and loves the infamous burgers. He wants to have more, but his pride won't allow him to admit his mistakes, so he tries to sneak one. This, however, does not end well for him. Luckily for us, this does not kill his hopes and desires. In fact, it will lead Squidward to have a dream about Krabby Patties as his wife, and most importantly, the curse deleted scene. You see, in the edited episode, Squidward simply sneaks into the Krusty Krab and finds the patty vault. He gets his wish and lives happily ever after. But his journey was not so simple at the start. In the original episode, as Squidward enters the Krusty Krab, he gets flamed up by 2 buckets of gas as booby traps and security. But it was for a good reason, as this episode aired after one of the most tragic moments in history, 9/11. Nickelodeon did not want to use any explosions at that time, since it was a sensitive issue. But while Squidward played it relatively safe in his love for Krabby Patties, SpongeBob took it to a whole nother level in this next deleted scene. In the episode To Love a Patty, everyone knows how loyal SpongeBob is to the Krusty Krab and Krabby Patties, but this episode takes that idea to its absolute limits. It starts off with SpongeBob making a lot of Krabby Patties. He falls in love with one of them and ends up calling it Patty. SpongeBob genuinely believes in her and eventually brings her home. The pair start dating and doing ridiculous couple activities together. As the episode goes on, Patty slowly spoils, but this doesn't seem to bother SpongeBob, as he takes Patty to a date at the Krusty Krab. Everyone tries to talk some sense into SpongeBob, as the rancid smell was driving everyone away, but SpongeBob doesn't give in until he smells Patty, which seems to break the trance. He then realizes what he must do and eats Patty. While the general concept of this episode was innocent, there was one scene which would have changed everyone's mind. Originally, there was a scene where SpongeBob wakes up in nothing but his underwear next to the Krabby Patty that had bite marks in it. Luckily, the scene was deemed too suggestive and removed from the episode altogether. But both Squidward and SpongeBob's lives don't get any easier in the next episode. SpongeBob in Random Land. A token of appreciation is often good, but that's not what happened in SpongeBob in Random Land from season 12. The episode starts off with Mr. Krabs and his usual obsession with money. So when an order comes in from Random Land, a dangerous town where nobody can predict what can happen, Krabs sees a fortune waiting to be made. So he forces SpongeBob and Squidward to deliver the order, and so they begin their journey. The episode documents this quest of finding the customer in Random Land, all while witnessing just how random the place really is. SpongeBob and Squidward don't give up no matter the obstacle, and finally find their customer. But it wasn't before going through this scene. But this scene was never supposed to be this innocent. In the original scene, an appreciation of Squidward fan art came to this jump scare. Safe to say, a lot of kids were frightened by this, causing Nickelodeon to quietly edit it out of the reruns. But now, let's move on to the next deleted scene. In the episode Scaredy Pants, season 1 of the show was considered to be fairly innocent. That is, until the Scaredy Pants episode. That really scared some of the younger audiences. The episode starts with everyone taking advantage of SpongeBob, who gets easily scared. They nickname him SpongeBob Scaredy Pants.
That's just SpongeBob Scaredy Pants.
As he rushes home and even gets more scared by everything around him. Thus begins his quest to appear scary. But none of his tricks quite work. He then crashes a Halloween party, dressed up as the Flying Dutchman. People laugh at him when he fails, and things hit a breaking point when the real Flying Dutchman arrives. In his final show of anger, the Dutchman removes the costume from SpongeBob and sees him with his brain exposed. This horrifies the ghost, who understandably runs away as fast as he could. And as soon as the rest of the characters see it, they flee the scene too. But if you thought a far-off shot wasn't enough, the original episode had planned the camera angles very differently. SpongeBob's costume was meant to be on full display, with close-up shots to capture how truly horrifying he was. But luckily, SpongeBob's production team decided that a far-off shot and an ending reassuring the audience that SpongeBob's skin will grow back would fix the issue. But hey, at least SpongeBob got his wish. While SpongeBob willingly shaved off his skin in the episode, Sandy had something worse done to her. In the episode, someone's in the kitchen with Sandy, ranked as one of the worst episodes in SpongeBob history. This episode was unsettling to begin with, and yet fans didn't realize that there was a worse version waiting for them this whole time. The episode starts off with Plankton trying to steal a Krabby Patty from Sandy. When that doesn't go according to plan, he follows her into the tree dome. He then watches Sandy take off her astronaut suit, but it doesn't stop there, as she also takes off her fur coat like a suit. Plankton then steals this suit, which he wears to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. But SpongeBob is not a merciful coat. While Sandy is searching for the culprit of the missing fur coat, just as Plankton got his hands on the formula, Sandy breaks in and makes Plankton. This wasn't the only deleted scene though, as Sandy had also covered herself up with a construction cone, creating an accident. There was yet another scene where she tried to buy clothes, but the manager kicked her out, saying no clothes, no service. But now, let's take a break and look at some deleted scenes from the SpongeBob movies. Starting out with some deleted scenes from Sponge on the Run, the third movie of the franchise, and the production crew had a lot of experiments they wanted to conduct on the film. The film was set in motion as a result of one of Plankton's plans. He and Karen decided that SpongeBob was the reason all their plans failed. Meanwhile, in Atlantic City, the selfish ruler, Poseidon, uses up all of the slime from his latest sea snail, which is necessary to maintain his appearance. He orders the obtaining of a new snail, and Plankton kidnaps SpongeBob's pet snail, Gary, so that SpongeBob will no longer interfere with his plans. Once SpongeBob realized that Gary was missing, he swore to bring him back. Plankton was even so kind as to loan SpongeBob his robot for the journey.
Otto is your ticket.
And off went SpongeBob and Patrick on their mission to bring Gary back home. Without SpongeBob cooking Krabby Patties, the Krusty Krab's enraged customers trash the restaurant, despite Mr. Krabs and Squidward's best efforts to stop them. Otto, Plankton's robot, drives SpongeBob and Patrick to an old western town, where they meet a tumbleweed spirit named Sage. He reveals to SpongeBob and Patrick that they are dreaming, and they must overcome a special mission to continue their search, giving them a challenge coin to grant them bravery. They enter a tavern by the ghostly zombie pirates and decide to free their souls from the evil spirit El Diablo, but Diablo traps the duo. They get out of the situation where Diablo is accidentally disintegrated from them. They even free other pirate souls, as SpongeBob and Patrick were woken by Otto. Now, accompanied by Sage, SpongeBob discovers that Poseidon will enslave him with the rest of his previous snails. When Gary's slime runs out, arriving in Atlantic City, Sage warns the pair to not be distracted by the city's attractions, but they ignore his last warnings. After a fun-filled night, SpongeBob and Patrick discovered that they have lost the coin challenge that allowed them to be brave, but they nonetheless enter Poseidon's palace. Both are immediately arrested and imprisoned in a dungeon, where they try to take Gary. Krabs, Plankton, and Sandy all stage a rescue, and they end up becoming friends with the king. A cute story with a good moral in a fully animated movie. Or that's what Nickelodeon wants you to think. Originally, it was supposed to be a hybrid live-action movie, with King Poseidon being an actual human being. He was also meant to have dark black minions to corner SpongeBob and Patrick, but in this plotline, Poseidon kidnaps Gary to clone him, but Paramount rejected that idea. But it gets even crazier. What if I told you that there was a plot not under the sea, but with cats instead? Before the production production of the movie, the team was also toying with the idea of a science fiction approach, and giant cats were the villains. And it didn't stop there. There was another idea that involved the characters visiting a whole different worlds, such as a futuristic one made up of dolphins. But those were scrapped because Steven Hillenburg, the creator of the show, loved the more realistic plots, and so the team did what he would have wanted. There were other scenes directly from the movie. For example, the Camp Coral flashbacks were meant to be in the start of the film, not hiding the blatant advertisement for their recent show, but it was later moved to be further into the movie. That wasn't all, as initially, Gary's droppings could have been seen when SpongeBob was looking for him in his litter box. Overall, it's clear that a lot went into this movie, and it was overall a success. But now, let's talk about the next deleted scenes. In the episode Truth or Square, this one was meant to be the Krusty Krab's 117th birthday, airing as a special episode. But there was one line in a scene that would have changed how we saw SpongeBob before being quietly deleted. The episode starts with Patchy holding a TV extravaganza and waiting for SpongeBob. Once he realizes that SpongeBob is not coming, he gets on his boat and goes to Bikini Bottom Atoll. In an animated part, SpongeBob is getting ready for his usual day as a fry cook, except this time, he's extra excited because it was an anniversary for the Krusty Krab. Krabs make sure the security is tight before doing the event, while Plankton decides that it's the perfect time to strike. Soon after, the Krusty crew went into a freezer to get an ice sculpture that SpongeBob made for the occasion, but as soon as they went inside, the door shut behind them and locked itself. The gang tried to escape through the air ducts, and Plankton joins them. And also, Patchy the pirate gets eaten by a whale. Back in Bikini Bottom, the gang has a lot of flashbacks to everything that has led up to this point. While Plankton tries to overhear the formula, he gets thrown out, and Krabs' wallet is allowed to escape in order to get his money. They try to use a radio transmitter to call Sandy to come rescue them, but this startles Patrick, who destroys the transmitter. This leads to SpongeBob remembering that he once got married to Sandy, before being revealed to be a play.
SpongeBob, do you take Sandy as your lawfully wedded wife?
I do.
And Sandy, do you take SpongeBob as your lawfully wedded husband?
And how?
And here's where it gets interesting, because in the original clip, SpongeBob was supposed to say one line. As the priest says that he didn't know it was a play, SpongeBob says,
But it doesn't have to be.
and Sandy then slaps him. This was cut to ease any doubts that SpongeBob liked Sandy romantically, and Nickelodeon never spoke of it again. At the end of the episode, SpongeBob saves the Krusty Krab by singing a song, closing the episode for good. But while this episode spared SpongeBob from a lifetime of marriage, this next one spared him from a torture room. I'm talking about the episode Snowball Effect. This episode was meant to be innocent, just the characters having a snowball fight, but the original clip had one extra detail that would have turned a lot of heads. The episode begins with an iceberg floating over Bikini Bottom, causing it to snow. SpongeBob and Patrick immediately jump on the opportunity to have a snowball fight, and they try to get Squidward to join, but he turns down the offer, choosing instead to watch the fight in hopes that SpongeBob would get injured. But his words cause SpongeBob and Patrick to sign a peace treaty, infuriating Squidward. In order to get the fight to continue, he joins in, but it was clear that it was no joke to Squidward. When the relentless attacks feel too serious to the duo, they quietly sneak back to the pineapple to evade Squidward. Taking the opportunity, Squidward creates a full-blown fort called Fort Squidward. He gets into a lucid state, believing that he was still being attacked by SpongeBob and Patrick. Meanwhile, the duo relaxes in the pineapple as the episode ends. But what a lot of fans don't know is that originally, we were meant to see the inside of Fort Squidward. He had made a fully equipped torture room with a rack and even a guillotine. The scene never made it to production though, as it was considered too violent for the show. But now, let's move on to the next episode with deleted scenes, Sailor Mouth. This episode had a lot of controversy to begin with, as SpongeBob learns to curse, along with Patrick. But once the original recordings were leaked, no one could unhear it. The episode starts with SpongeBob getting ordered to take out the trash, where he finds a swear word written on the dumpster. He and Patrick decide that it was a sentence enhancer, and the next day, they use it everywhere.
Hi, Squidward. How the are ya?
Nice Day, isn't it, Squidward?
All of the customers leave to go somewhere more family-oriented, and they finally learn from Squidward that there are 13 bad words, and the one they were using was the 11th one. This causes SpongeBob and Patrick to wipe their tongues and swear that they would never repeat it again. But as expected, this promise would be short-lived. Back at the house, the duo play a game of eels and escalators. When SpongeBob loses, he shouts the bad word. Patrick tries to go to Mr. Krabs and snitch on SpongeBob, but in the chase, he does the deed himself. They both tell on each other, causing Mr. Krabs to punish them by forcing to give the Krusty Krab a new coat of paint. But when Mr. Krabs gets hurt, he says all 13 of the bad words in one shot. This causes the duo, with Krabs following them, to go to Betsy Krabs' house to snitch on her son. Betsy faints when she hears so much cussing, and scolds all of them. The episode ends with Betsy also swearing, but it was just a horn sound, giving them all a good laugh. The important thing in this episode is that every time one of the characters cursed, there was a dolphin squeal to cover up the word, but the voice actor in the original recording actually said these words. In a Giggle-leak, these uncensored recordings have been fully released. Some fans actually edited the video part to match the audio, giving the full experience. But the next deleted scene on the list is from another SpongeBob movie, which, like in the previous movie, had a lot of changes, and the one we're talking about is Sponge Out of Water from 2015. This movie was a first of its kind, using CGI to animate SpongeBob, but it was initially never meant to use it, and buff SpongeBob was never even a thought. The movie follows another pirate called Burger Beard, who plans to steal the formula, the one thing that Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob have been guarding with their lives for decades. Plankton also makes an attempt to steal it, but just as he gets his hands on the bottle, it disappears. SpongeBob and Plankton escape in a soap bubble. As SpongeBob knows that Plankton is innocent, Bikini Bottom turns into a wasteland without the formula, and SpongeBob swears to bring it back. Time travel is introduced, and the duo meet a magical dolphin, Bubbles, overseeing the galaxy, but they accidentally get him fired when Jupiter and Saturn collide. After escaping that situation, they try to steal the formula from the past, only to realize that it was the fake that Plankton had planned earlier. Sandy suggests a sacrifice to the sandwich gods for Krabby Patties, and SpongeBob volunteers. As the town tries, SpongeBob mentions he smells Krabby Patties, which Mr. Krabs also confirms. The townsfolk follow the scent to the surface, and Bubble returns, expressing his hatred for his job and his gratitude to be fired. He thanks SpongeBob by allowing him and his friends to breathe on land to follow the smell. The team lands on a beach and discovers that the smell leads to Burger Beard's shop, which he had converted to a real food truck. The pirate is revealed to have stolen the formula using the magical book, which then he tries to banish the group to an island full of pelicans. SpongeBob uses that page Sandy had to transform himself and the others into superheroes. They find Burger Beard, who tries to run away, but they catch up to him. The team destroys the book during the ensuing battle, but Burger Beard manages to overpower them. Plankton ends up being the one to save the day. He had become a muscle-bound hero, attacking Burger Beard with SpongeBob's help. They get the formula back and send Burger Beard flying to Bikini Bottom. Using the final page's magic, the gang returns to Bikini Bottom. With the Krabby Patties back, the city returns to normal, and Plankton resumes his usual formula-stealing plans. But what if SpongeBob was never supposed to become a superhero? In retrospect, it feels like it went off track to what the show represents, instead trying to make SpongeBob into a parody of Marvel. There is a simple explanation to this though. Mr. Krabs' voice actor, Clancy Brown, once revealed that Paramount heavily restricted the production of the film. Initially, the movie was supposed to be entirely 2D animation, but Paramount wanted CGI sequences. They felt that CGI would be good to market, and this can clearly be seen in all the advertisements played during that time. But that's not all. They also removed almost every scene that involved Mrs. Puff and Mr. Krabs' daughter, Pearl. The executives felt that these characters were not as popular as Sandy, and so to give her more screen time, they cut them off. If that wasn't enough, the original film was also supposed to have a full song that they edited out in the final cut.
Oh, Monday! Thank gosh it's Monday, my number one day.
SpongeBob, in his usual cheery self, finds the silver lining in what's the most dreaded day of the week for many. But this song was cut, and the reason for it was never given. Speaking of deleted scenes, the movie was also supposed to have a callback to one of the show's jokes. It was none other than the Nasty Patty, the ones that poisoned the health inspector in one of the episodes. After the formula is stolen in the movie, SpongeBob should have created them as a result of forgetting what actually to do. In a desperate move, Krabs serves them to the refund-demanding customer. As expected, this did not go well, and the customers puke all over Squidward, but this scene was obviously removed on account of them being too gross. After all of these changes, audiences finally got to see the movie as it is today, but not even the first movie was spared from getting its scenes taken apart, as seen in the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the very first movie to start the SpongeBob film series, and perhaps the most beloved one of them all was this one. But despite that, this movie was sorely missing one of its key characters. The movie starts with Mr. Krabs opening a second location of the Krusty Krab, right next to the original. His fry cook, SpongeBob SquarePants, hopes to be promoted to manager of the new restaurant, but Krabs instead selects his co-worker, Squidward, explaining to SpongeBob that he's just a kid who is too immature to handle the position. Depressed, SpongeBob goes to the Goofy Goober ice cream parlor, where he and his best friend Patrick Star indulge themselves with ice cream, and wake up the next morning with a hangover. Krabs' rival, Plankton, initiates Plan Z in an attempt to obtain the Krabby Patty secret formula. He steals King Neptune's crown and sends it to Shell City, and frames Krabs for the crime. Neptune confronts Krabs about the stolen crown and is convinced of Krabs' guilt. SpongeBob promises Neptune that he will be back with the crown. In order to ensure that SpongeBob keeps his promise, Neptune freezes Krabs and threatens to execute him if SpongeBob does not return in 6 days. SpongeBob and Patrick head for Shell City in the Patty Wagon, a Krabby Patty-shaped car stored underneath the restaurant. After the duo leave Bikini Bottom, Plankton steals the formula from the frozen crabs and uses it to sell Krabby Patties. He distributes free helmets with the Krabby Patties that brainwash customers into doing Plankton's bidding. This lets him take over Bikini Bottom, with Dennis as a hitman for SpongeBob to keep his position. After encountering a trench, Dennis, and a human diver on their path, SpongeBob and Patrick learn to behave like men. They even get a ride from David Hasselhoff back to Bikini Bottom. They reach just in time to save Krabs, but Plankton unleashes his slave army off on them. SpongeBob, embracing the fact that he's accomplished so much despite being a kid, uses the power of rock and roll to play the Goofy Goober rock song, freeing Neptune and the citizens of Bikini Bottom from Plankton's control. As Plankton is arrested by the police, Neptune unfreezes Krabs, who grants SpongeBob his wish to become the manager of Krusty Krab 2. Now, it's easy to see why this movie was so loved by the audiences. At the very start of the movie, we see human pirates, but there was somebody that was missing. Patchy the pirate and Potty the pirate never made their appearance in the movie. According to the showrunners, they felt that the intentionally low production of Patchy scenes in the show conflicted with the quality of the movie, and so they cut him out. He was instead replaced with Captain Bart the pirate. But there were minor changes to the movie too. In the Goofy Goober scene, SpongeBob was supposed to call the people attending to him as bartenders, but this was later changed to waiters so that it didn't get associated with alcohol consumption. But perhaps the biggest scene change is when the duo escape Shell City. Originally, they were supposed to meet Sandy, and she was an actual squirrel. This disgusts Patrick to the point where he vomits to express it. On top of this, Sandy was also supposed to have squirrel exterminators after her. Makes you wonder why Sandy wants to go back to land so much. Another shocking difference is that SpongeBob and Patrick were supposed to be the human versions of themselves, but it was cut out for not being in line with the film. Speaking of SpongeBob's first movie, let's go back to his first episode, Help Wanted, because there's actually some deleted scenes in this. When SpongeBob finally applies for the job of becoming a fry cook at the Krusty Krab, with some encouragement from Patrick, he tumbles into the restaurant, but his neighbor Squidward is horrified and tries to get Mr. Krabs to reject him. Mr. Krabs takes Squidward's side and gives SpongeBob an impossible task for a very particular spatula.
Go out and fetch me a hydrodynamic spatula with, port and starboard attachments and turbo drive. And don't come back till you get one.
Thinking they got rid of him, the duo try to get on with their day, but they get ambushed by anchovies. Mr. Krabs and Squidward climb onto a pole to get away from the mob of customers. SpongeBob returns, having fulfilled the task, and proceeds to serve every single one of them. This earns him the fry cook job that he prides himself on for decades to come. But not even the theme song was the same in the first making of this episode. SpongeBob SquarePants was initially meant to be called SpongeBoy Ahoy, and with that came this theme song. But intros aren't the only ones to be changed in the show, as the episode Graveyard Shift had an entirely different ending to the episode. Krabs isn't the only one taking advantage of others in this episode, as the original recording was meant to end with someone else, giving it a very different ending. The episode starts with a customer not getting the memo on the Krusty Krab's opening hours, but hearing the word money makes Krabs instantly open the restaurant to be 24/7. Squidward is not happy and finds his joy by playing around with SpongeBob's fears. Realizing that SpongeBob was afraid of the dark, Squidward tells him the story of the hash-slinging slasher.
At this very restaurant, the hash-slinging slasher used to be a fry cook, just like you.
But Squidward seems to never learn his lesson, as karma comes for him once again. 3 a.m. soon arrives, and the restaurant is now completely devoid of customers or any other signs of life, besides SpongeBob and Squidward. Suddenly, the lights begin flickering, though Squidward initially thinks SpongeBob is to blame. After realizing that nobody's touching the light switch, Squidward then blames the faulty electrical wiring, as the restaurant was not built to run 24 hours a day. Soon after, all of Squidward's stories start to come true. The phone rings with no one on the other end. A mysterious bus arrives and drops off a singular customer with a spatula for a hand. Getting scared out of their minds, Squidward and SpongeBob cling to each other. But when the person steps into the light, they realize that it was just a normal person wanting a job at the Krusty Krab. The lights flicker once again, but this time it's revealed to be a vampire named Nosferatu. They casually tease him as if it's a well-known habit to the Krusty Krab and staff alike. Smiling at the trio mischievously, he flicks the lights off once more, cutting to black and ending the episode. But this ending did not feature Floorboard Larry, the lost character in this episode. Initially, Floorboard Larry was meant to receive some mail from SpongeBob, and it was him who was flickering the lights. But the appeal of the character was not seen, causing him to be cut from the final episode. While Floorboard Larry was deleted from the episode, the same was about to happen to Krabs' parents in the episode Clams. Mr. Krabs is known for his obsession with money, and this episode was a highlight as he finally earned his millionth dollar. But the plotline was initially supposed to deal with death. The episode starts with a customer, under SpongeBob's suggestion, ordering coral bits for just $1. Then Mr. Krabs excitedly announces that this particular dollar is his millionth one earned. And after congratulating and thanking SpongeBob and Squidward, he says that they're going on a surprise trip to celebrate. Squidward guesses that they'll be going to special places, such as Fancy Springs, Palmer Island, or Bikini Bottom Folk Village. To Squidward's dismay, however, they go clam fishing in a boat called the SS Cheapskate on a smelly lagoon. While fishing, SpongeBob accidentally hooks the back of Mr. Krabs' pants, which he has taped the millionth dollar to, and rips it off. Once the dollar is thrown into the lagoon, the trio is warned about a giant clam that lives down there. SpongeBob frantically reels the dollar back on the boat, and for a few seconds, Mr. Krabs is happy that the dollar is safe. But nothing could have prepared him for what was going to happen next, as a giant blue-lipped clam suddenly jumps out of the lagoon, grabbed the dollar from Mr. Krabs' claws, and swam away. Krabs cries to Squidward, who agrees to get it back just to make him stop whining. The trio prepares a lookout, equipped with the necessary supplies. After 3 days, the clam is still not returned. SpongeBob and Squidward have grown tired of waiting, so they try to fool Mr. Krabs by giving him an ordinary dollar out of Squidward's wallet. The dollar was all crumpled up, torn slightly, and so soaked in the lagoon, and kissed up with coral blue 3 semi-gloss lipstick that SpongeBob used. Mr. Krabs sees through their scheme and states that he will give a sandwich to whoever retrieves the dollar. He goes as far as to toss the other sandwiches and the entire fridge into the lagoon, making the sandwich the only piece of food on board. Squidward and SpongeBob realizes that their boss has gone mad and try to escape, only for Mr. Krabs to catch them and use them as live bait for the clam. The clam finally takes the bait and advances towards the boat with Mr. Krabs' dollar lying on its tongue. Mr. Krabs jumps onto the clam's tongue and grabs the dollar, only for the clam to shut it in its mouth and dive back into the lagoon. SpongeBob and Squidward panic until Mr. Krabs' head pops out of the lagoon. He reveals that he and the clam fought until Mr. Krabs agreed to trade his entire body. The only parts left of him were his head and his left arm to hold the dollar. But 2 characters were added to the episode. In the original run, Krabs' parents were never meant to exist, being depicted as dead instead. But the production team later scrapped this idea, as really young audiences might not have been taught about death, leading them to ask these questions too early. His parents aired with the names Victor and Betsy Krabs. Speaking of death, Squidward's surgery scene in Dying for Pie can hardly be forgotten. In this episode, Squidward thinks that SpongeBob is gonna blow up and spends a lot of time with him in a pretty wholesome way. But that doesn't mean that this episode was all innocent, as one of the scenes had to be edited for being too gross. Only to find out that it's Employee Brotherhood Day, a day on which all employees must exchange gifts that they've made for themselves. For his gift to Squidward, SpongeBob presents him with a sweater made out of his own eyelashes. Squidward rejects it, which makes SpongeBob cry, eventually leading to this scene.
Is this any better, Squidward? I made this one with my tears.
Squidward, wishing he could simply buy a gift instead of spending time making one, finds a group of pirates outside with a sack of pies. The pirates claim that these pies were bombs, but Squidward does not care and buys it. Firearms and SpongeBob. As if this episode didn't already deal with explosions, the scene where SpongeBob opens Squidward's chest was supposedly supposed to play out differently. Originally, SpongeBob was supposed to say, "Who's the doctor here, me or you?" The last part is important, as when his blood ruptures from Squidward's heart, SpongeBob plugs it up nervously with his hand. But speaking of doing questionable things for fun, this episode took fun to a whole other level, with the episode literally being called Fun. The episode begins with business as usual at the Krusty Krab, until suddenly an alarm begins to blare, signaling an attempt by Plankton to steal a Krabby Patty. Plankton, Patty in tow, escapes outside by making a huge hole in the door with a laser. SpongeBob chases after him, and after a long chase across Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob finally recovers the Krabby Patty and is congratulated by the townsfolk. While Plankton walks home downcast, SpongeBob, feeling sorry for Plankton, decides to befriend him. SpongeBob invites Plankton to go jellyfishing with him. Realizing that he can take advantage of SpongeBob, Plankton plays along. With encouragement from his wife Karen, at Jellyfish Fields, Plankton remains fixated on evil and destruction, while SpongeBob tries to explain fun to him by singing a song.
F is for friends who do stuff together. U is for you and me.
Plankton then seems to forget about stealing the formula and begins to develop a genuine sense of friendship. When Mr. Krabs sees this, he refuses to believe that Plankton has changed and sets up a trap for him the next day. He attempts to tempt Plankton with a Krabby Patty, but Plankton sits motionlessly with the patty in front of him. After SpongeBob and Plankton leave to go to the movies, Mr. Krabs begins to suspect that Plankton has gone straight and nice, until he realizes that he actually did take the patty. In an attempt to prove Mr. Krabs wrong, SpongeBob reaches into Plankton's pockets, only to find a Krabby Patty. Plankton attempts to explain that he realizes now that he only ever wanted friendship, before admitting to everything and running off with the patty through the movie screen, tearing it in half in the process. He is eventually caught, as there was only a concrete wall behind the screen as the episode closes. But in the original episode, there were a few dialogues that changed the nature of the story. In the jellyfishing scene, Plankton initially pointed his gun and said the line,
What happens after we
Shoot them.
SpongeBob SpongeBob is clearly disturbed as he says that. The reason for deleting this scene is obvious enough. SpongeBob's team are well aware that references to violence are not received well in the show. While this was understandable, the next one deleted is a unique theme song. In the episode, Whatever Happened to SpongeBob? The episode starts with SpongeBob walking up and greeting the mailman, but this simple gesture proves to be dangerous, as a truck runs him over. This alters SpongeBob's personality, causing him to be more clumsy. After a series of accidents around his friends, he is cast out after being called Idiot Boy. This causes him to feel guilty and prepare to leave Bikini Bottom for good. This journey is hard on him, and in one instance, he hits his head, causing amnesia. His friends are back at home to organize a whole search plan for the sponge. Meanwhile, SpongeBob wanders into New Kelp City, where he attempts to get a job. However, each time he gets a job, SpongeBob uses his bubble blowing skills to get him, resulting in him being fired. Back in Bikini Bottom, Sandy shows her friends her new invention that can track SpongeBob, the Sponge Tracker. Squidward, not wanting SpongeBob to come back, purposefully destroys the device with a hammer, claiming he dropped it. Krabs, in a desperate move, buys Squidward's loyalty by offering him a jeweled Furby egg as a retirement gift, which would complete his collection. In Kelp City, things are taking a different turn, as SpongeBob's bubble blowing skills trapped a local gang, earning him the mayor position. His friends finally find him, but SpongeBob now calls himself Cheesehead Brown Pants. They also realize that he has amnesia and doesn't remember any of them. They bring SpongeBob back to Bikini Bottom, where SpongeBob is surprised at his previous life. His memory is finally restored when the Furby egg falls on his head. The episode ends with SpongeBob realizing he's no longer welcome at Kelp City. He decides to stay in Bikini Bottom forever, much to Squidward's dismay. To keep up with the theme of the plotline, the episode initially had a very different theme song. Instead of the iconic final cut. Well, weird things are expected out of SpongeBob. When Mr. Krabs tried to intimidate him, it led to the biggest controversy in SpongeBob history. In the episode Midlife Crustacean, the episode starts with Mr. Krabs feeling old as he struggles to get out of his hammock bed. He goes into his kitchen to find that Pearl has made him breakfast, and to make matters worse, she forces a huge pill down his throat. It continues to follow him everywhere he goes. Getting fed up, Krabs decides to join SpongeBob and Patrick in their antics to get back his youth. He even does the cool guy handshake and gets ready for a big night out together. At 8:01 p.m., SpongeBob and Patrick arrive at Mr. Krabs' house as a part of their fashionably late promise. Ready for the big night out, the scene then changes to them doing many other bizarre activities in various settings, such as at this highway, laundromat, dentist, roof redoing, and a game of Dungeons and Dragons in Old England, and the library, none of which have yet succeeded in remotely amusing Krabs. Krabs gets visibly more and more frustrated. At his breaking point, he angrily decides to cancel the night and go home, but Patrick tries to change his mind by saying that he will miss out on the pantry raid. This was an occurrence in which the trio will be invading a woman's house to steal her underpants. This changes Krabs' mind, and he agrees to go along. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Mr. Krabs arrive at a house and are successful in obtaining an unspecified woman's underwear. However, they are caught red-handed when the woman turns on the light and catches the boys in the middle of the act, revealing her to be Mr. Krabs' mother. As a result, Mr. Krabs is grounded for the remainder of the night and sent to his room. SpongeBob apologizes for what happened, but Mr. Krabs forgives him, as being in his old bedroom made him feel younger, finally getting his wish. It's easy to see why this episode got banned, and the idea of the three boys breaking into a woman's house to steal her underwear is hardly what SpongeBob is trying to teach. Fortunately for everyone, Nickelodeon buried this episode as best as they could, even with how insane SpongeBob gets.
I think I'm gonna explode!
There are some episodes that fans think are a mistake. From Squidward and SpongeBob switching personalities, to Sandy literally taking off her fursuit. Today, we're going over the 7 SpongeBob episodes that fans think were a mistake. Starting off with Breath of a Fresh Squid. The episode starts off with reintroducing a familiar dynamic between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward. Squidward is sleeping peacefully in his house, while SpongeBob and Patrick watch him sleep and eat some chips. Soon after, Squidward wakes up and freaks out, asking why his neighbors are in his room. Apparently, they're waiting to watch the sunrise with him, and they break into Squidward's house every morning.
Here we are on the 4th of July.
At this point, just like any normal person, Squidward decides to make a 3-hour-long monologue about how he never wants to see SpongeBob and Patrick again. And also, like any normal person, he creates an electric fence around his house and a catapult to throw SpongeBob away whenever he comes inside. But somehow, even after they got catapulted away from Squidward's house, the duo lands back inside the fence. So far, this has been like any other SpongeBob episode. Squidward's grumpy, SpongeBob's too cheerful, and Patrick, well, he's Patrick. But this is where they completely flip the script. When Squidward is kicking SpongeBob and Patrick out, he accidentally touches the electric fence and gets shocked to the point where his entire brain chemistry changes. And for maybe the first time in his life, Squidward's happy. SpongeBob says that he's gonna go to the petting zoo, and Squidward excitingly asks SpongeBob if he can join. The trio enjoy the entire day together, and the next morning, it's Squidward who breaks into SpongeBob's home to watch the sunrise with him. So far, both SpongeBob and Patrick were loving the new Squidward, but it's only when they get to work that SpongeBob starts to miss the grumpy old cashier. Squidward tries to do his normal job, but he's too nice to all the customers, and even gives out free Krusty Krab hats. At this point, Krabs tells Squidward to go cook some patties with SpongeBob if he can't do his normal job properly. But let's just say he cooks his patties too well, and it causes a certain Sponge to get jealous.
Squidward made him.
They look okay to me.
Mr. Krabs even gives Squidward a reward for all the hard work he's done.
You're me new employee of the month.
And if things couldn't get any worse, Patrick suddenly walks through the door with a cake for the winner of Employee of the Month. So SpongeBob has to do the most painful thing possible. Patrick also invites everyone over to his house to celebrate Squidward getting Employee of the Month. And at the party, Squidward is the one who is happy and cheerful, while SpongeBob is sitting on his own and hasn't even touched his cake. He's just staring into the table, trying to convince himself that it's okay if Squidward is a better cook than him. It's only when SpongeBob sees Squidward pogo dancing with his best friend that he decides enough is enough and kicks Squidward out of his own party. Unfortunately, Squidward forgets that the fence he'd planted around his house is electrified, and turns into normal, grumpy Squidward once again. Worst of all, both Patrick and SpongeBob touch the fence as well, meaning all three of them are their saddest, grumpiest versions. All in all, it's not a bad episode by any means, and I really enjoyed watching it. So why is this episode considered a mistake? Well, from the start of the show, SpongeBob has become the goofy character who doesn't understand boundaries, while Squidward has been the relatable cashier. And while there have been other episodes where Squidward becomes happy, the reason why this episode stands out in particular is that Squidward becomes more SpongeBob than SpongeBob himself. For once, the balance between the two characters was completely flipped, with Squidward getting everything to work out for him, while SpongeBob just has to watch someone with way less plot armor than him luck his way through life. And honestly, it's really strange to see even Squidward smile. But what's even weirder is the time that Sandy became furless. I'm of course talking about the episode Somebody's in the Kitchen with Sandy. The episode starts with Plankton trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, a diabolical plan to use this to his advantage.
Wish me luck!
Her spacesuit and helmet today, but Plankton claims that's just because she can breathe underwater now. And
Double grilling temperature of 274 degrees.
Plankton is finally gonna get what he's wanted for so long, straight from the source. Nothing could make this heist even easier.
I'm putting the secret Krabby Patty formula out in plain sight.
But looks wrong when she's naked. I'm surprised they were even able to air that scene, as some of the concept art for this episode showed Sandy as even more disgusting outside of her fursuit. But even this episode is better than the next one on our list, where two completely opposite characters switch lives. As the saying goes, the algae's always greener on the other side. At least, that's what the episode The Algae's Always Greener tries to tell us. It starts off with Plankton having yet another plan to steal the Krabby Patty for himself. But just like always, he ends up missing the mark.
It was just another failed Krabby Patty theft attempt.
So he goes back, once again by his own incompetence. Even his computer wife Karen taunts him for failing yet again. So he takes out some soda and decides to get something to eat to get his spirits back up.
Synthesize me up some grub.
But that's when he has a genius idea.
I wish I could be successful like Mr. Krabs.
Then why don't you just use the thing you built last Tuesday?
Okay, well, it was Karen's idea. But still, Plankton decides to use the transmorgifier and goes into an alternate universe.
Mr. Plankton? I'm in the Krusty Krab.
That's when he hears SpongeBob outside, serving up fresh Krabby Patties to the customers. He asks SpongeBob to take one of the patties to his office for bun inspection. But when SpongeBob says he can't do that, Plankton falls back into his old habits.
That patty is for the customer, sir.
I'll boil the customer.
SpongeBob then hands Plankton 2 patties that he made on the off chance that Plankton wanted to do a bun inspection that day. And Plankton quickly takes the patties back to Krabs' office. Wait, I mean his office, to do a classic evil villain monologue.
The patties. SpongeBob?
But he's interrupted by SpongeBob wanting his weekly performance review about the quality of his Krabby Patties. Even when Plankton says it's fine as it is, SpongeBob just won't take no for an answer and literally begs Plankton to come up with something that he can improve on.
The sauce.
But as soon as Plankton says this, SpongeBob immediately goes into despair, unable to even say anything. So Plankton thinks fast on his feet and makes a horrible decision.
You're on register now.
So SpongeBob is now co-cashiering along with Squidward. But just when Plankton thought he could finally get some alone time with his Krabby Patties, Squidward barges in, saying that he can't work with SpongeBob all day. And Plankton is a fair boss, so he decides to follow Squidward's request.
Hope you like gray.
But Plankton still can't catch a break, because right then, his daughter shows up and asks Plankton for an arm and a leg.
Could I please have an advance on my allowance?
And once again, Plankton decides to fix it in his own way, offering Pearl a huge advance just to get out of the way.
Go crazy.
But that's just the least of his problems.
Oh my goodness!
But even this wasn't enough problems for one day, because suddenly a siren started going off, and that's when SpongeBob explains why the siren was installed in the first place.
And he's finally got a Krabby Patty!
That's right. Since Plankton has the life of Eugene Krabs, Krabs has the life of Plankton. And after a dramatic showdown with SpongeBob, just like always, Mr. Krabs fails to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, and everyone celebrates. By the end of this, Plankton just hates having this life, so he willingly goes back to his old life and eats holographic meatloaf.
Yeah, it's not worth it!
Honestly, it's safe to say that this episode was a mistake in more ways than one. First up, this might be a pet peeve, but I think they should have renamed the restaurant to something other than the Krusty Krab, because it just doesn't make sense for the alternate universe restaurant ran by Plankton to still be called the Krusty Krab. Second, Krabs behaving like Plankton and Plankton behaving like Krabs is just so strange to see. It seems like something that the writers had a nightmare about, and then decided to actually make it into an episode. But worst of all, naked Krabs might be worse than naked Sandy when it comes to being nightmare fuel. All in all, this episode is definitely up there on the list. But while in this episode, we saw Mr. Krabs from an alternate reality act weirdly, in the next episode, we see the canon Mr. Krabs nearly sell the formula to Plankton in The Hankering. The episode starts with a loud noise being heard from Mr. Krabs' office. He immediately kicks everyone out for some reason, and then lets SpongeBob and Squidward off work early. He runs off into the distance, but not before leaving behind something very interesting.
A nickel?
After a short road trip, Krabs and SpongeBob end up at the Slot Pail, where he orders chum. And that's where they find why Mr. Krabs is really here.
One plate of chum.
SpongeBob freaks out about how Mr. Krabs can like chum when they have Krabby Patties back in Bikini Bottom. But that's when Mr. Krabs talks about his old Navy days, where he formed a special bond with chum after a traumatic incident. So him loving chum was only because of that one day in the Navy when he was forced to eat it. And now he has a craving for chum constantly and can't go without it. And somehow Krabs convinces SpongeBob to keep this a secret. But that's when Sal drops a bombshell on Mr. Krabs. At this point, the withdrawal kicks in, and Mr. Krabs absolutely needs his chum. So he takes on SpongeBob and decides to teach him how to make chum. But SpongeBob has an interesting reaction to just the ingredient list for chum. But SpongeBob tries to make chum in his own way. None of these are good enough though. At this point, the withdrawal is hitting him hard, and he even goes to the chum bucket to try to find some leftover chum in the dustbin. This is where the show breaks one of its core rules. Mr. Krabs will always try to protect the Krabby Patty secret formula and his money first and foremost. That's his defining characteristic. And he even sold SpongeBob for a few cents. But the moment Plankton offers a lifetime supply of chum, Mr. Krabs is ready to give up everything he has.
Oh, you want it?
And look, you can't blame him considering the sight he sees when he comes back to Plankton with the formula and SpongeBob in tow. But as always, Plankton turns on Mr. Krabs and tries to take the formula for himself, while also killing Mr. Krabs in the process. But things don't go as he planned. What he was forgetting is that Mr. Krabs absolutely loves chum. So while Plankton is busy swimming through the chum to find the secret formula, Mr. Krabs just eats every last bit of chum, the secret formula, and Plankton. And it even had a happy coincidence.
I think I killed me taste for chum.
Honestly, like I mentioned before, this episode is the biggest mistake so far. Unlike the previous episodes, where characters go to alternate universes, get electrocuted, or take off their fur, in this episode, Mr. Krabs is willingly selling out his money and the Krabby Patty secret formula for some chum obsession that we only find out about in this episode. It just doesn't really make sense. And so it's understandable why a lot of people, including myself, think that this episode is a mistake. Maybe if it had a few scenes where Mr. Krabs tries to resist handing over the formula and fights off his chum obsession, it could have made it more believable. But as it stands, this episode is one of the weirder ones out there. But Mr. Krabs isn't the only one with extremely weird episodes about him. So now let's talk about the next episode that fans thought was a mistake, Rockabye Bival. It starts off with SpongeBob and Patrick hearing a strange noise from a coral plant, and that's when they find something interesting.
It's a baby scallop.
Now, the natural response Patrick has is to destroy the scallop. But like any good mother, SpongeBob decides to adopt the poor, defenseless scallop, and even gives it the best seat in his house.
There you go.
But from the start, it's easy to see that neither of them are ready for the responsibility of taking care of another life.
Somebody's hungry.
SpongeBob even goes as far as giving up one of his Krabby Patties to the scallop.
So you crazy?
But even when SpongeBob tailors his food to the scallop, nothing seems to be good enough.
Let's try a donut.
French fries?
The scallop isn't done and immediately starts crying, so SpongeBob has to find a way to make the scallop stop. But for one, it's Patrick who understands what to do and saves the day.
Good as new.
Considering how great this day went, Patrick and SpongeBob decide to adopt the scallop and become its dad and mom respectively. And it does go well for one day, with the trio spending their entire day together, and even eating ice cream. But right from the second day, Patrick gets into his character too much. And since he's the dad, he leaves for work, while SpongeBob has to manage everything at home. Even with 6 hands to do his work, he has a little too much to handle. And when Patrick finally comes back late from work, he promises that he'll give SpongeBob a break tomorrow, and just needs the day off to get used to work. And SpongeBob agrees, saying that he can't wait for that break. But guess what happens the next day?
Patrick, I really need my...
Tomorrow?
After multiple days of this happening, the only break SpongeBob has gotten is a break from having to speak in coherent words. So SpongeBob decides to take matters into his own hands and have a talk with Patrick.
You never do anything.
That's when we get one of the funniest meme templates from the show, where SpongeBob shows just how many diapers the scallop can use. At this point, Patrick starts crying and says that he had no idea it was this hard for SpongeBob, and commits that he'll make sure he comes home by 6 p.m. on the next day to give SpongeBob his long-deserved break.
12 o'clock.
Oh boy, that was some party!
They argue again, and in the end of it all, Patrick says that he doesn't need this and goes back to work. And then we get probably the most dramatic reveal of this entire episode.
This is work.
So, just like any old married couple, they get straight back to arguing, but their argument is interrupted by Junior, who is ready to jump out of the second-story window to get away from their arguments. Just when it seems like SpongeBob and Patrick are the worst parents for not being able to save their son, they get to see the fruit of their, well, at least SpongeBob's labor.
He's flying.
He gives SpongeBob and Patrick a reward for taking care of him for so long. And both SpongeBob and Patrick are really happy with how the scallop grew up.
Let's have another.
And that's where the episode ends. Firstly, even though it's just a baby clam, it's hard to even imagine SpongeBob and Patrick as parents, let alone actually see them on screen. But the real mistake in this episode is because of SpongeBob. It's completely in character for Patrick to laze off and do absolutely nothing, but SpongeBob is just a goofball, as much as Patrick. And while he's dedicated to his work at the Krusty Krab, I still don't think he'd get used to working so much and caring for a baby so quickly. But in the next episode, it's Patrick who causes the entire episode to seem like a mistake. Yeah, we can't make a video talking about SpongeBob episodes that were a mistake without talking about Patrick Smart Pants. It starts off like any other episode featuring SpongeBob and Patrick. It shows them being pretty dumb and trying to catch some jellyfish. But as they're having fun and running around,
I find all this laughter to be highly illogical.
for one of the first and only times in the show, Patrick is smart, and he doesn't even want to catch jellyfish anymore.
Creatures of the deep,
Means.
admire the beauty of nature.
Instead of spending time together with SpongeBob, Patrick makes up an excuse that he has to go.
Creative outlet provides a spiritual release.
By this point, Squidward is impressed and asks Patrick to be his mentor on the spot, and Patrick, who is starting to become quite arrogant, agrees to do it.
Let's take it from the top.
And when SpongeBob tries to join their session, Patrick quickly kicks him out, saying that it's a solo clarinet performance.
Clarinet only.
Patrick just says they're not compatible anymore.
We're just not compatible anymore.
And he literally leaves SpongeBob crying in the street. But Patrick didn't just abandon SpongeBob, he also took away SpongeBob's other best friend. But if messing up one friendship wasn't enough, she doesn't know anything.
Even the simplest of mammals could figure it out.
By this point, both SpongeBob and Patrick are at their home, reflecting on what has happened so far.
I never thought I'd lose my best friend.
SpongeBob.
Patrick finally comes to his senses and decides that he wants SpongeBob back. So he goes on a quest to find a way to get fun back in his life by doing countless experiments. But none of this works, so he comes up with a new plan. Patrick's entire plan is to kidnap SpongeBob, and then they'll have fun with him. But even all of this isn't enough to make Patrick feel better.
When did the fun go away?
It went away when you jumped off that cliff.
So Patrick knows what he has to do. He's going to redo the accident, and then he'll bring the fun back in his life.
My shit!
But when he lands down, it doesn't work. He's still the same old smart Patrick. But that's when he gets an idea.
Brain coral! No wonder you got so smart, buddy.
And so Patrick decides that he wants to give up his smartness just to have fun with SpongeBob again.
Knowledge can never replace friendship.
And that's where the episode ends, with Patrick being dumb once again. Now look, smart Patrick alone is enough to make this entire episode a mistake. But what's even more confusing is that some coral can do the job of a brain for Patrick better than Patrick's own brain. And he's smart enough to catch Plankton and literally study him, and even better than Sandy at researching stuff. Overall, this SpongeBob episode is definitely one of the show's mistakes, but it's still better than the last episode on our list, an episode where one of the most beloved characters tears Bikini Bottom down just to hunt her best friend. I'm talking about the episode Prehibernation Week. It starts off with Sandy raking leaves in an interesting way.
There we go.
But soon after, she realizes that there's still a lot of leaves on the ground because SpongeBob has been raking too slowly. And like most people, he blames his tools.
These are big leaves.
She quickly gets started on raking the leaves while she tells SpongeBob to get the other work done. It's clear that Sandy is in a rush to get all of her work done.
I'm hibernating next week.
SpongeBob does some quick math and realizes that they only have 168 hours left before Sandy has to go hibernate. At this point, Sandy has a small meltdown.
I can't burn carbs in my sleep.
But she has her best friend SpongeBob, and he makes a promise to her that he'll make sure she gets everything done.
I'm willing to sacrifice any of my time.
Well, he and Sandy go have a good day together on Sand Mountain. It's not enough for Sandy, so the moment SpongeBob goes to sleep, she does this. The next day, SpongeBob gets a bowling ball dropped on his head, gets thrown off the sea needle, gets impaled by a fire hydrant, and gets so traumatized that he literally dissolves into goo. He tries to tell Sandy that he can't keep doing these dangerous stunts anymore. And for once, he sounds like the voice of reason, but his mouth just won't cooperate with him.
I just feel like maybe I need
So the first opportunity he gets, he runs far away from Sandy and hides at the best place he can think of. But as he's running away, he leaves behind his clothes, and when Sandy finds them, she concludes what any reasonable person would think.
Something terrible must have happened to him.
She goes down to the Krusty Krab and divides everyone up into 2 teams so they can find SpongeBob. But no matter where they look, they can't find SpongeBob anywhere.
He's not in my thoughts.
Think again.
By this point, they've been at it for days and ask their overlord, Sandy, for a break.
Think about the children. Use the children.
No one wants to keep searching for the adorable sea sponge anymore, so they come up with every excuse to make Sandy think that they've found SpongeBob. But Sandy isn't gonna give up that easily, so they use the oldest tactic in the book.
Look, he's up in the sky. Huh?
Now, Sandy is all on her own, so now there's no one to stop her from being completely unhinged. So she literally tears down Bikini Bottom just to find SpongeBob. Everyone is hiding inside of Patrick's Rock, and the moment that they realize that SpongeBob is with them, they have a very interesting reaction. SpongeBob is backed up in a corner, so he has to come clean and admit to Sandy what really happened.
I can't play with you anymore.
And Sandy is very understanding of SpongeBob. She doesn't even say one bad word about SpongeBob, literally abandoning her because he couldn't deal with his feelings. And that's where the episode ends. Honestly, this has to take the cake when it comes to being the biggest mistake. First off, SpongeBob being too scared to have fun is so out of character for him. His personality is that he's a goofball who loves doing dangerous things and doesn't realize when he's in danger. We even made an entire video about all the times that SpongeBob should have died, but survived. So this just doesn't make any sense. Moreover, Sandy is definitely a little unhinged a lot of the time, but even she isn't that unhinged that she would tear down Bikini Bottom just to look for SpongeBob. But the biggest offender in this is definitely Squidward. We can clearly see that he's also doing work to try to find SpongeBob, when the actual Squidward would never do extra work for SpongeBob. Overall, it's an episode where no one acts like they should, and for that reason, this is the episode that most fans think should have never made it on screen. This is one of Plankton's many attempts to steal the secret formula.
About any second now.
And this is what happens every time Krabs catches him. But no matter how many times Mr. Krabs throws him out, Plankton never seems to learn his lesson. So today, I'm gonna look over every time that Plankton stole the Krabby Patty secret formula and rank how close he got on each attempt, from plans that suck to taking over the entirety of Bikini Bottom. Starting with the time that Plankton tried to use Mr. Krabs' only family member against him. In the episode, Plankton's intern. Plankton is a functional member of society, only when Karen is around. But on this faithful day, she decided to go see her motherboard. To fill her spot, she put out a help wanted sign for an intern. Many people apply, but quickly leave when they realize that Plankton wanted to pay them sub-minimum wage.
As an intern, you will gain valuable work experience at a sub-minimum wage.
The only one left was Pearl, Mr. Krabs' daughter. Even though Plankton is deathly afraid of whales, he realized that Pearl was the only one actually willing to work for him and hired her. When she came home after her first day, Krabs thought that he was teaching his daughter a good lesson and accidentally dug his own grave. He teaches her that a good employee follows the boss's orders, but this would be the beginning of Mr. Krabs' worst nightmare. Pearl went to Plankton the next day and promptly told him that she could get him the secret formula. That's when Plankton realized that Pearl was Mr. Krabs' daughter and hatched a plan to steal the formula. Pearl then helps Plankton break into the Krusty Krab, but they find SpongeBob sleep cooking. Thinking they evaded him, they went into the office, but SpongeBob had already called Mr. Krabs. In the meantime, Pearl uses the combination to get the formula out of the safe, but before she could give it to Plankton, Krabs shows up. Pearl literally waves the formula in front of Plankton as she explains everything that happened to her dad, and she ends up leveraging the situation to get triple allowance in exchange for the formula. So close, yet so far for Plankton. Speaking of using family members, Plankton's grandma had a similar idea in Grandmom's The Word. In this episode, Plankton had promised his grandma that he would own the Krusty Krab by her 90th birthday, and that birthday was the next day. She calls him up and pressures Plankton into lying that he had succeeded. This is when he decides to turn to SpongeBob to help convince Mr. Krabs to fool his grandma. Mr. Krabs swallows the secret formula bottle to keep it safe for the next 8 hours and orders everyone to pull off the perfect plan. Make the restaurant Plankton themed. Plankton's grandmother arrives and falls for the plan, truly believing that Plankton was the owner. She even starts having a crush on Squidward.
Oh my goodness! Who is this handsome young man?
But things started getting wrong when she started to leave, and as a last birthday wish, she requests to see the Krabby Patty secret formula. Krabs gives in, hands Plankton's grandmother the bottle, and they take pictures. But without a warning, the grandmother spouted a jetpack and took off. Plankton thinks that he will share the success with his granny, but she betrays him and kicks him away. Luckily, it was easy to get the formula back, as she fell asleep with it. And Squidward's love stories that we just mentioned brings me into this next episode, where Plankton had a interesting attempt to get the formula, and this is in the flower pot. Right at the start of the episode, he pretends that he wants to see the world with Karen, and so is moving away from the chum bucket. Krabs doesn't believe him, but Plankton's house is demolished in front of his eyes. They celebrate and soon realize that it has been replaced with another store, the Flower Pot Florist. Krabs runs to have a good relationship with the owner, not wanting a repeat of Plankton. He meets Petunia and doesn't realize that it was Plankton in a disguise. SpongeBob leaves the store and Squidward falls in love with the owner. Plankton plays his role well and really gets into being a florist with his slogan, "Power to the flower." But Plankton is Plankton and sells exploding flowers in disguise to Mr. Krabs. But before that plan goes into action, Plankton realizes that being a florist is now his new dream and runs to collect flowers back from the Krusty Krab before they explode. With a minute left, he almost succeeds, but is interrupted by Squidward, who professes his love. The flowers explode, exploding Plankton and making the end of his florist dreams. I think this was initially an attempt to get the secret formula, but this just backfired. While Plankton tried to create art with flowers, he would steal an art piece for the formula in the episode Fiasco. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob trying to create a commercial for the Krusty Krab, but their ideas don't seem to be good, leaving both of them depressed. Squidward then watches a customer destroy a set of Krabby Patties and exclaims that it was an art style of a famous artist called Fiasco. Although initially Krabs planned to throw it away, he saw this as an opportunity to make money, and so tried to take the artwork from Squidward. They argue over who really owns it, but Farfael Brandbridge, an art evaluator, comes in and declares the work to be authentic. This makes the piece a national treasure, meaning that neither Mr. Krabs nor Squidward owns it. Mr. Krabs allows people to view it in his restaurant for free, provided they each order 2 Krabby Patties each. Later, Plankton sees this artwork and mistakes it for garbage. Planning to reverse engineer the recipe, he steals it. Police officers immediately chase him and dog him in every step of the way. When he inevitably loses, he's baffled as to why the police are chasing him.
What's with the police? It's
just a bag of garbage.
Plankton then goes to SpongeBob's house and demands an explanation as to why the police are after him. SpongeBob then explains what he stole is in fact a priceless work of art, which gives Plankton the idea to sell the art piece and declares SpongeBob and Gary as accomplices to his crime. Enraged by these accusations, SpongeBob confronts Plankton about this, and as they start to argue, Patrick suddenly barges in, clearly chewing something. It's revealed that he ate the artwork, which he mistook for
A fiasco.
much to SpongeBob and Plankton's horror. Even after evading the people after them, Plankton loses the formula thanks to Patrick's stupidity. Speaking of the cops, we can't forget the time that Plankton was arrested for stealing the formula. In the episode Call the Cops, the episode begins with Plankton getting chased around by Krabs and SpongeBob with the formula in his hands. He's caught by a police officer who arrests him for stealing, claiming that no one is innocent. The formula becomes evidence as the officer takes it and Plankton away. Without the formula, the patties would have to be made with just chum, which makes everyone leave. Ironically, to take drastic measures, Krabs and SpongeBob go to the department to steal the formula back. Plankton gets another shot at stealing the formula by tricking Patrick, his cellmate, but both him and Krabs arrive at the same time, and they fight it out. In the end, Plankton, Krabs, SpongeBob, and Patrick all get arrested, and the episode leaves Plankton still formula-less. Even future employees of the Krusty Krab must be warned about Plankton. And that brings us to the training video. This episode traces Mr. Krab's success with the Krusty Krab, as well as all the information for new employees and what they'll need. It has 7 parts, from humble beginning, the Krusty Krab today, training, personal hygiene, your workstation, interfacing with your boss, and finally, emergency situation. The last part is particularly for what to do when Plankton tries to steal the formula. In it, Plankton has fitted a Krabby Patty with robotic legs, making it look like a spider. He then rides it and tries to get out of the Krusty Krab, but the robot is just not fast enough, and Plankton once again is launched out of the Krusty Krab. But you see, Call the Cops wasn't the only time Plankton was arrested, and we can see this in the episode Jailbreak. The episode begins with the narrator explaining the Bikini Bottom jail, mainly its newest member, Plankton,
and currently of that little miscreant, Plankton.
Known as prison number 655321. The warden lets all the prisoners out, including Plankton, and he hears SpongeBob calling him out, who wants to know why he is present. SpongeBob explains that he was secretly hired by Mr. Krabs to secretly work at the jail every weekend in order to watch over Plankton, as another job in the Krusty Krab. Plankton, though, does not like that idea, but the prison warden tells him to quiet down. Hilariously, though, he turns out to be quite the fan favorite among the criminals, who all rally behind him. Obviously, in true Plankton fashion, he hatches a plan to get the formula, but SpongeBob overhears their plan and reports it to Mr. Krabs. In the meantime, Plankton helps everyone escape jail, and they go to the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob notices Plankton and all of his cellmates preparing to invade the restaurant, but Mr. Krabs says that they are ready for them. Plankton yells out to his cellmates to bring him the formula, and they begin breaking down the door while using a whale cellmate as a battering ram. They successfully break in, and the whale prisoner opens the safe. Mr. Krabs urges Plankton not to get it, but he doesn't listen. As Plankton heads towards the formula, the curtain rises, and the entire Bikini Bottom police force emerges from it. Mr. Krabs reveals that he knew of Plankton's attempted break-in, and had enough time to hide the entire police force in his safe. The police force then takes Plankton and the rest of his cellmates back to jail, but somehow Plankton is honored as the entire Krusty Krab falls apart at the end of the episode. But now, let's go way back for a minute to the first season of the show, in an episode called Culture Shock. In this episode, the famous Krusty Krab no longer is famous, with profits being down way too much that month. To counter this, Squidward proposes hosting a talent show, with him as the host.
No, wait! A talent show with your host, me.
though he just wanted to make himself a star. He manages to convince Mr. Krabs, and later that evening, the Krusty Krab is packed. Among the audience attending the show are Patrick and SpongeBob's parents. Among the acts of SpongeBob, Gary, and Pearl comes Plankton, being a magician called the Amazing Plankton. He plans to make a Krabby Patty disappear before the audience's eyes, but of course, he tries to run off with Patty. Much to Krabs' dismay, he catches him and takes the Patty back, but at least this time, Plankton is allowed to leave with his dignity intact. In this next one, Plankton would have gotten the formula, had it not backfired on him. In the episode The Krusty Bucket, Plankton is seen stealing Krabs' hair, as he gets a hair sample from Mr. Krabs while he's showering. He then races back to the chum bucket, where he combines the sample with one of his antennae to create the SpongeBob version of Frankenstein, Plank Crab. Plank Crab already had created a plan to steal the formula, and ends up gaining control of the entire restaurant due to his hearty handshake. He uses the handshake on Plankton too, tricking him and kicking him out of the restaurant, horrifying them both. Inside, Plank Crab runs everything perfectly, and not being able to handle it, the two former bosses team up. After multiple failed attempts, they give up and apply to be managers at the new Krusty Bucket, but Plank Crab makes them managers of the bathroom. They fight while doing their jobs, and this makes Plank Crab so angry that he split. The two sides of Plank Crab shake hands in order to have a clean fight, and both melt from how good their handshake is. It was an amazing plan, if I do say so myself, but sadly, Plank Crab's reign ended without Plankton knowing the formula. Speaking of Krabs and Plankton teaming up, this next episode almost gave Plankton the formula for the exact same reason, in the Chum Caverns. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs tripping on a loose floorboard in his office. He uncovers it to reveal the secret formula. Plankton this whole time had been watching it from a long telescope that reached into Mr. Krabs' office, and went to get it by caving underground. But he ends up getting trapped in a cave with beautiful scenery. Recognizing the business opportunity, Plankton planned to set up his restaurant at this location, drawing customers with the heavenly environment. At that moment, cave dwellers appear, but Plankton tames them with his whip, making them his new employees. Later that day, Mr. Krabs discovers that Plankton has more customers by his cave, and decides to go down there to try to sell Krabby Patties. Plankton is mad about this though, and decides to get his revenge by trapping Mr. Krabs underground. The two end up fighting to get each other trapped. They end up both getting stuck though, and regret their pointless feud. The pair decide to work together if they ever get out, and soon SpongeBob comes to save them. But here's where Plankton kills his chance on his own. Plankton goes back on his word to travel above ground to steal the secret formula, but when he reaches it, the hole he created causes a chain reaction that causes him to fall back down. Only if he could have kept his promise. But that wasn't the only time that Krabs was sweet to Plankton, as seen in the episode Truth or Square. This episode is one of the biggest celebrations for the Krusty Krab. It's 117th anniversary. SpongeBob arrives at the Krusty Krab, where Mr. Krabs reminds them to keep a close eye on all the doors and entrances, including the air vents. He explains that SpongeBob needs to make sure that Plankton does not sneak in during the 117th year anniversary celebration. Meanwhile, at the Chum Bucket, Plankton spoke with Karen about how he's been a failure for 50 years of business, while Mr. Krabs has been nothing but successful. In order to redeem himself and finally get his hands on the Krabby Patty secret formula, Plankton decides that he'll sneak into the Krusty Krab, while the employees and Mr. Krabs are distracted by the festivities, and steal the formula. The Krusty crew go into the freezer to get one last decoration for the celebration, and promptly are locked in. When they finally make it out through the air vents, SpongeBob brings the customer back with a song.
Oh, Krusty Krab, oh, Krusty Krab.
In the meantime, Plankton sees that the Krusty Krab is empty, giving him the perfect getaway with the formula. But he gets thrown around as hungry customers fill the restaurant. But in the chaos, he's unfortunately caught by Mr. Krabs, mentioning that he was in a good mood. Krabs agrees to not launch him out, and instead blows him into a balloon, kicking kicking him out that way. This next one though was strange, as the formula was not kept in its usual safe, but instead in a safety deposit box in the episode The Great Patty Capper. The episode starts with the curtains opening to SpongeBob going into the Krusty Krab freezer and finding out they've ran out of Krabby Patties. So he and Mr. Krabs try to make more, but cannot remember the recipe. So Mr. Krabs gives SpongeBob the key to the vault in which the recipe is hidden, and he, along with Patrick, board a train to the bank for the safety deposit box. Sometime during this ride, the key to the box is stolen, and SpongeBob and Patrick must find the thief. It's later revealed that Plankton does indeed have the key. SpongeBob and Patrick chase Plankton through a wild goose chase, the coaches, the tinder, and the locomotive, before Plankton separates the train by disconnecting everything, leaving the duo in its cabin. As the two try to stop the train, Patrick suddenly breaks its brake, causing it to go out of control. This whole situation stalls the chase, letting Plankton get the formula. He is caught by Krabs, but still manages to get away from him. Just as he thought that he held the world in his hands, Plankton is stopped by the train crashing into the wall next to him and getting squashed underneath. So much for the greatest chase in the show. But all of this doesn't mean that Plankton does not care about his business, as seen in the episode Bucket Sweet Bucket. In the beginning of the episode, Plankton is tired of the Chum Bucket's lack of business, so he attempts to remodel it and fails due to his size. Hatching a plan, he gets SpongeBob and Patrick to help remodel, and soon he realizes that they have both done everything wrong and breaks down sobbing about his failure. Considering SpongeBob and Patrick's heart, this only attracts their loyalty towards him to make the Chum Bucket a success. Soon after seeing their progress, Squidward criticizes them and tells them that they are not painting correctly. He joins in and paints different, unexpected art on the front of the restaurant, and when Squidward officially joins the team, Plankton only makes his sob story sound worse, which causes them to start replacing every part of the Chum Bucket with parts from the Krusty Krab, which leads Plankton to slide into the safe and get his hands on the formula, only to discover that Krabs had replaced it with a to-do list. The real formula was inside Mr. Krabs, who had gone on vacation and took his most prized possession with him. Once again, Plankton went through all that trouble for literally nothing. But let's not forget about the time that Plankton accidentally helped someone else steal the secret formula. His actions in the Sponge Out of Water movie is what really set the whole movie's plot in motion. Right at the beginning, once the introductions were given, Plankton flies in and drops a jar of tartar sauce on the Krusty Krab, calling himself Air Plankton, and the Krusty Krab crew then becomes soldiers. A food fight ensues. Plankton crashes but comes back with a tank instead. When the crew defeats the tank as well, Plankton raises up in a 12-foot tall robot of himself, with him being the pilot of this ginormous thing. He uses this to smash into the restaurant, but quickly runs out of gas. But that doesn't mean that he ran out of ideas, tricking Krabs into taking what he claims was his last cent. Turns out he actually hid himself inside it. Once in the safe, he gets his hands on the formula, but in the process, he triggers the lockdown sequence that Mr. Krabs had within his safe. SpongeBob and Plankton fight over the formula, with Krabs being locked outside his own restaurant, but suddenly, the formula vanishes, having been stolen by Burger Beard, a pirate. It caught everyone by surprise, including Plankton, who after all of this, who still remained without the formula, even after the gang manages to get it back at the end of the movie. But let's go back to the first season again, to one of the first times that Plankton actually got away with getting the formula. The episode starts with the Krusty Krab going on lockdown, as Plankton stole a Krabby Patty by cutting a hole in the wall. He actually manages to get away, and SpongeBob is tasked with finding him. He chases him all over Bikini Bottom, even flying on one instance. Plankton then manipulates SpongeBob by giving back the secret formula and a sob story to go along with it. SpongeBob feels bad for him, however, and befriends him, truly believing that he's changed. Krabs, however, isn't so easily fooled, and while the duo is at the movies, he tells SpongeBob to check Plankton's pockets. Of course, he finds a Krabby Patty, and after trying to keep up his sob story, Plankton grabs the Krabby Patty again and tries to run away through the screen at the theater. It's implied he got away, that is, until Mr. Krabs opens the screen and reveals that there are only concrete walls behind them. Plankton is smashed against the wall, along with his beloved Krabby Patty beside him. By now, everyone knows that there has been a feud feud between Mr. Krabs and Plankton for decades, and the show finally decided to give us some lore in the episode Friend or Foe. And right off the bat, the episode starts with Plankton strolling into the Krusty Krab in a cake. He makes balloons pop around him as he launches the lower half of the cake onto the safe. It explodes, giving Plankton free access to the formula. He gets it and tries to escape on a small rocket off the cake, but SpongeBob catches him just in time, spraying him with condiments. This instance prompts Krabs to tell everyone the story of him and Plankton. He reveals that they were once best friends when they were babies.
There was a time when Plankton and I were best friends.
Until grade school, the other kids picked on Plankton, and when Mr. Krabs tried to stand up for his friend, they would pick on him too. See, Mr. Krabs grew up poor, not having any money. He literally had to wear rags to school. But when he discovered money, it became an instant obsession. But even then, Krabs spent it on Plankton. When Krabs cuts to the present, SpongeBob reveals that he actually got back the formula while Krabs was telling the story. Turns out, the duo poisoned their first customer and fought over the recipe, sparking the war between them that will entertain generations. In the end, Plankton only got a piece of the formula, which said a pinch of chum. This ultimately led him to make the chum bucket as it is today. Plankton did try to replicate the recipe, but failed miserably, causing him to chase the formula from that point forward. It all led to the making of this video. So if you're liking it so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Karen causes the duo to reminisce about their friendship. They hug, but it was yet another ploy from Plankton to steal the formula. Technically, the episode ends with Plankton having the formula, but it's heavily implied that he lost it at some point. Well, Plankton tried to renovate the chum bucket in the last one. Krabs tried to renovate the Krabby Patty in Goodbye Krabby Patty. The episode starts with SpongeBob coming up with the idea to sell frozen patties for their convenience. Krabs steals the idea, calling it the Frozen Krabby Patty. The new face of the frozen Krabby Patties ends up being Patrick, and the patties get more filler to create more profit. The enormous success of this product causes Mr. Krabs to fire SpongeBob from his fry cook job, and immediately rehires him to work at the Krusty Krab Museum. This museum documents the complete history of the Krusty Krab, complete with animatronic versions of the employees and merchandise, which includes the frozen Krabby Patties themselves. Later on, Plankton comes by and tries to take the formula, but he's confused when the bored SpongeBob doesn't do anything to try to stop him. SpongeBob tells him that there is no point in stopping him, because all the formulas in the restaurant are blank souvenirs. Plankton then asks for a frozen Krabby Patty, which SpongeBob nonchalantly gives. Plankton then runs off with the frozen patty. However, Plankton doesn't realize that the patties are made of sand, which was the filler that Krabs used to get even more profit. Even though this was one of his most successful schemes, it unfortunately did not end up well for him. But even that previous one pales in comparison to the time that Mr. Krabs offers to sell the formula to Plankton. The episode follows the construction of a highway called Shelly's Superhighway, which SpongeBob is against because it's set to go right through jellyfish fields. SpongeBob is conflicted on whether this would be a good thing or a bad thing, but what he doesn't realize is that the road goes over the Krusty Krab, right to the chum bucket, as per Plankton's plans. Despite SpongeBob and Patrick's best efforts, the superhighway is unfortunately built. It destroys Krabs' business, with no one even having entry access to the once famous restaurant. Defeated, Mr. Krabs says that he will initiate Plan Z9er, which involves him giving away the formula to Plankton and closing the Krusty Krab forever. Just as Krabs is about to sell the formula to Plankton, the jellyfish invade the chum bucket, causing Mr. Krabs to flee as Plankton is grabbed and stung by the angry jellyfish. The jellyfish continue to attack the city for 3 whole days, and the news continuously broadcasts coverage about it. Seeing an opportunity, SpongeBob uses this chance to convince the Bikini Bottomites to destroy the highway and restore jellyfish fields. The plan works, and the superhighway is destroyed, along with Plankton's plans. Poor guy. But that somehow wasn't the only time that Krabs wanted to sell the secret formula to Plankton, and it somehow gets even worse in the episode called Hank hankering. The episode begins with Mr. Krabs' stomach growling as one of the customers of the Krusty Krab starts to get worried. He closes the restaurant and goes somewhere by going under a taxi, while SpongeBob follows him to give him a nickel that he dropped. It turns out that Mr. Krabs has gone outside of the Bikini Bottom to the Slop Pail, where he orders chum. SpongeBob sees that Mr. Krabs is eating chum and likes it, but he does not understand why. Mr. Krabs tells him a story about how during one of his Navy days, he was forced to eat chum due to it being the only food left, and upon eating it, he grew to love it. SpongeBob promises to keep this a secret, and afterwards, the Slop Pail closes as the owner of the restaurant, Sal, wants to become a movie star. This leaves Mr. Krabs with no chum to eat other than from the chum bucket. After multiple failed attempts to get it, he gives up and goes to Plankton, who promised him a lifetime of chum in exchange for the formula. When Plankton takes the formula, he uses the chum bucket glove to prevent Mr. Krabs from taking his chum. However, Mr. Krabs gets out and attacks him, causing the formula to sink into the chum. Plankton then decides to swim inside of the chum to obtain the formula, but SpongeBob has a better idea and tells Mr. Krabs that he should eat all the chum so he can reach the formula first. Mr. Krabs follows through with this plan and ends up getting the formula, but in the process, he becomes extremely overweight, and this also causes him to lose his decades-long appetite for chum, and even accidentally eats Plankton. But now, let's go to the time where Mr. Krabs completely lost his grip on reality, in the episode Plankton Paranoia, and it flips the usual formula on its head. Instead of Plankton plotting against Krabs, it's Krabs who starts plotting against Plankton, or at least the Plankton that he thinks he sees everywhere. The episode opens at the Krusty Krab, where Mr. Krabs rallies SpongeBob and Squidward for Plankton's daily attempt at stealing the Krabby Patty secret formula. SpongeBob is assigned to guard the door, while Squidward naps, but after 3 hours, Plankton never arrives. The silence rattles Krabs, who begins to see Plankton in every shadow. The next day, Krabs' paranoia spirals. He bans Pockets, uses a reef blower to strip clothes from customers, and even accuses Old Man Walker of smuggling patties under his hat. Soon, he's banning mothers with babies and driving away the entire lunch rush. Eventually, he boards up the restaurant, fires SpongeBob, Squidward, and Sandy, and sets up the place with traps, convinced everyone is secretly working for Plankton. Later that night, Krabs hides under the register boat with the formula strapped to his neck. He hallucinates cups, eyeballs, and even his own reflection transforming into demonic Planktons, including a giant horned monster version. Things hit a breaking point when he sees SpongeBob, Squidward, Patrick, Pearl, Mrs. Puff, and Old Man Jenkins sneaking into the chum bucket, which convinces him his entire world has betrayed him. Moments later, SpongeBob knocks on the door, claiming Plankton had kidnapped Squidward. Pretending to help, Krabs secretly cooks booby-trapped Krabby Patties filled with spikes and fireworks. Together, he and SpongeBob head to the chum bucket, where Plankton reveals Squidward is tied up, only to press a button that unleashes decorations and confetti. It's actually a surprise party celebrating the anniversary of Plankton's first ever formula heist. Krabs is touched and reluctantly enjoys the party with everyone else, but when the guests leave, Plankton finds the formula left behind, only to discover it's strapped to a stick of dynamite. The chum bucket explodes in the final gag, with Krabs' paranoia coming full circle. Now, everyone knows that Karen is an amazing wife to Plankton, while he, on the other hand, is a complete jerk to her, and this would ultimately cost him one of the closest times he's ever gotten to the real formula, in the episode Single Cell Anniversary. In this episode, Plankton learns that it was his and Karen's wedding anniversary, and that Karen got him a copy of the Krabby Patty secret formula for his present, but he still couldn't have it until he returns a favor and gets her a present. Plankton then teams up with SpongeBob and Patrick to learn a serenade for Karen as a present. Plankton walks into the chum bucket and starts singing the song,
Oh, my Karen.
Karen cries when it's over, and then starts uploading the Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton then tells SpongeBob that by wooing his computer wife, he has doomed the Krusty Krab and put that said restaurant in grave peril. SpongeBob is shocked at this, so he unplugs what he thinks is Karen, but is really just the coffee maker. Karen finally uploads the formula, but she starts crying again. This causes her to break down and short out, leaving Plankton still without the secret formula, making making him confused. She then shuts down, and the EMILP, Emergency Mother-in-Law Program, uploads and starts nagging, saying that Karen should have married an ATM. If only Plankton was a better husband. SpongeBob is perhaps the most loyal employee who protects the formula, with his heart and soul. But even he helped Plankton get the formula in the episode Surf and Turf. The episode starts with Sandy in her tree dome, making a ship in a bottle. She tests the cannons, only to have the ship in the bottle get destroyed. She throws it out, while SpongeBob comes in, drinking the bottle, complimenting on how it was what he needed. Sandy tells him how she's in a desperate situation for a ship in a bottle contest tomorrow. Wanting to help his best friend, SpongeBob takes out the formula from inside of him, throws out the paper, and gives the bottle to Sandy. However, SpongeBob realizes his mistake, goes to an airport nearby, gets on the plane, onto a cable car, into a devilish mountain. Inside is Plankton with the formula, but unfortunately, SpongeBob takes back the formula and goes back to the tree dome. Never knew Plankton had a house on a devil mountain, but even that doesn't help Plankton. Now, let's go back to Plankton's own plans, and we're gonna look at one of his most elaborate plans in the episode Inside Job, but he ends up accidentally going into SpongeBob's brain instead. Plankton goes into the optical system to see how to make Krabby Patties, but SpongeBob cannot see because of Plankton, an audio system, and listen to the formula, restoring SpongeBob's sight. SpongeBob then is horrified at his inedible creation, and thinks he forgot how to make a Krabby Patty. It really goes to show how much of SpongeBob's personality is actually connected to the formula, but too bad for Plankton. Speaking of which, I can't forget about the pineapple invasion episode. In this episode, Plankton gets his hands on the formula twice, but first, he strolled into the Krusty Krab with a skunk named Mr. Stinky. The customers fawn over the skunk, thinking he's a cat, but Plankton intentionally sets Mr. Stinky off by scaring him with a bee. And this doesn't affect Plankton as he doesn't have a nose, but the others are not so lucky. All of the customers, Squidward, SpongeBob, and Mr. Krabs, frantically leave the Krusty Krab due to the sting. Mr. Krabs knows that Plankton is inside of the Krusty Krab alone, and takes one of SpongeBob's arms to use as a nose plug before heading inside. In Mr. Krabs' office, Plankton is surrounding the safe with dynamite, and the detonation reveals that the safe has another safe inside. Before he could get away with the formula, Mr. Krabs crushes Plankton with his fists, and SpongeBob, with one of his own legs plugging his nose, tosses Plankton out the window with a spatula. Worried that he will return, Mr. Krabs wants SpongeBob to take the secret formula home with him, while he makes adjustments to his safe. However, the two of them do not know that Plankton is listening to everything with his severed antenna, and thus, SpongeBob's house becomes Plankton's biggest target. The next morning, SpongeBob talks to Gary, entrusting the safety of the secret formula to him. He has several failed attempts, but doesn't give up. He finally manages to get inside of SpongeBob's house by distracting Gary with a fake cutout of himself out the window. But that doesn't last long, as he gets caught soon after and fights with Gary. Gary beats him up until Plankton escapes into Gary's shell, thinking the secret formula is inside. But he's not left alone in there, as Gary's eyeball chases Plankton through the maze within his shell. When SpongeBob comes home, he is horrified by the condition of his house, but still glad that the secret formula is safe where he left it. Where did he keep the formula? On top of his television in plain sight. Meanwhile, Plankton makes it to the center of the shell and grabs what he thinks is the secret formula, but it's actually just an old grocery list. But in the end, a vet thankfully rescues Plankton from inside of the shell. Perhaps the episode with the most number of attempts in it has to be in Plankton Retires. Right off the bat, Plankton tries 5 different times to get the formula in various ways, but he's always caught by Mr. Krabs, who foils his plans. He finally seems to get fed up with constantly failing, and so unplugs Karen, and SpongeBob follows as he's not convinced that he really did lose his biggest rival. They follow him as he gets a room in a senior home, dressing differently and apparently setting up a new life. Once Plankton figured out that Krabs had been following him, he revealed his evil plan. The Plankton that pair had been following was a robot, and the real Plankton was in the Krusty Krab stealing the formula. The real Plankton blows up the safe again, and just as he was about to get away with it, Mr. Krabs appears and takes it from him. Turns out, Krabs had seen this coming and had sent robot versions of himself and SpongeBob to Dolesville. Meanwhile, Robot Krabs, Robot SpongeBob, and Robot Plankton are enjoying their holiday time with each other. Though it seemed like a foolproof plan, with extensive thought into it, Krabs is always the one step ahead of the supervillain. Speaking of Plankton's evil intentions, he once made a spatula to do his bidding in the episode Evil Spatula. The episode begins with Plankton faxing himself to the Krusty Krab, and while Krabs and SpongeBob are busy, Plankton then starts phase 2 by sawing a bit of SpongeBob's spatula, then places it beside the grill. This causes the spatula to be broken when SpongeBob tries to use it. He tries everything to fix it, but Mr. Krabs just tells him to get a new spatula. He then goes to Harvey's Spatula Emporium, where Plankton waits. Plankton then offers SpongeBob his own special spatula with magical powers, which SpongeBob quickly agrees to. They arrive at the Chum Bucket, where Plankton shows off a room full of spatulas and introduces SpongeBob to the majestic Sizzle Master. The spatula has a receiver with the other side being held by Plankton to give off the illusion that the spatula talks. Plankton tries to get put on grill duty while earning SpongeBob's trust, but SpongeBob is really careful about the grill and manages to foil the spatula's plans. It does, however, gain SpongeBob's trust by helping in every aspect of his life. Finally, SpongeBob gives the spatula grill duty, allowing Plankton to execute the next phase of his plan. He intentionally burns the patties and then requests the secret formula to make more. SpongeBob gives in and goes to the safe to get the paper. Krabs stops him as he realizes that it is Plankton behind the spatula and reads out the wrong ingredients disguised as the formula. Plankton actually makes this recipe, only for the Chum Bucket to blow up as a result. Plankton never passes up an opportunity to try to steal the secret formula, and we can clearly see this again in the episode It Came from Goo Lagoon. This time, it was a giant purple goo ball that spouted out of a volcanic crack in the bottom of the lagoon. Sandy tries to explain to SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and the Bikini Bottomites, and Plankton that the bubbles are made of highly toxic super goo that are safe when stable, but it is in their nature to be very unstable, and if popped, they can coat a large portion of Bikini Bottom in purple goo. Plankton hears this and unveils a multi-purpose shit, which he uses to find the crack where the bubbles are produced, and make a bubble large enough to cover the entire city. He succeeds in his quest, widening the big crack enough for such a bubble. Even though SpongeBob, Sandy, and Patrick try their best to catch Plankton, they fail and he destroys Sandy's submarine. To rub salt on the wound, SpongeBob attempts to send the bubble away, via creating a massive bubble bruiser. The attempt, however, backfires and allows Plankton to demand the formula. Krabs must fulfill this, or Plankton will pop the bubble. He gets his way, but on receiving the formula, he pops the bubble anyway, causing the entire city to get covered in purple goo. Plankton gets away and proceeds to read the formula on his shit. It reads just one ingredient. He quickly realizes that the formula is fake, and when he pulls down the paper, it reveals a stick of dynamite. The dynamite stick explodes, causing his ship to crash into the roof of the Chum Bucket. Plankton rarely works together with other people, but in the episode Captain Pipsqueak, he leads a team of villains and has better success than usual. The episode begins at the Chum Bucket, where Plankton yet again fails to steal the secret formula. He later watches TV and gets the idea to join the League of Evil. Plankton then goes and finds their secret lair, which happens to be accessible by going through a dumpster. Once there are many waiting to join the force in a subtle way. They try out but fail to enter the room. Plankton says he, for all intents and purposes, really wants to steal the formula for world domination. He goes on to commit acts of evil to gain their trust and succeeds. This causes them to rally behind him, believing they can dominate the world too if they were on Plankton's team. They ambush the Krusty Krab together, catching everyone off guard. Dirty Bubble, one of the villains, traps SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs as a distraction. Plankton steals the formula, but Man Ray finds out the formula is just a recipe for a sandwich. They get disappointed, give the formula back to Mr. Krabs, and kick Plankton out of the force. Even one of the villains got to know what the formula is after trying in just one episode. Poor Plankton has been trying to do that for decades. Speaking of Plankton using others to steal the formula, let's go to a time where he used his own pet to carry out his plan. It was in the episode Spot Returns. Plankton Plankton and Karen realize that their pet Spot is pregnant. Karen explains to him that the food-rich environments, such as the one Plankton provided Spot, causes amoeba to reproduce. Plankton then starts panicking, while Spot is generating other amoebas. The amoebas destroy various things in the lab, leading Plankton to attempt to get rid of them. He takes SpongeBob's help to sell the puppies to various citizens of Bikini Bottom, but the puppies steal items from their owner and return it to Plankton, who immediately gets an idea. He's about to start training them, but Karen is still rebooting, and Plankton finds it difficult to do that alone, before calling SpongeBob to train his pets. As soon as the training starts, SpongeBob shows him how to do innocent things, such as sitting and barking. All the while, Plankton teaches them how to do other things for evil purposes, such as opening a door and catching a grenade. After hours of training, Plankton introduces SpongeBob to the puppies: the Demolition Puppy, the Acrobat Puppy, the Identical Twin Puppies, and the Comedic Relief Puppy. SpongeBob realizes the plan, but is quickly trapped, while Plankton tries to open the bottle with the secret formula. SpongeBob uses the puppies to escape and takes back the formula, foiling another one of Plankton's plans. But of course, that wasn't the only time he tried to use his own family, as the episode Plankton's Army proves. This episode takes place on the 25th anniversary of Plankton trying to steal the formula. Plankton tries again with a robot and a dollar, and as usual, he is stopped by Mr. Krabs. He sadly returns to the chum bucket, and Karen suggests hiring some henchmen to help him out with his army. And after failing to recruit some thugs at a nightclub, Plankton remembers that he has thousands of relatives across the sea. Imagining them all to be evil geniuses like he is, he invites them all to the chum bucket. However, when they arrive, he sees that they are all dim-witted hillbillies, and realizes that he's been away from home longer than he thought. But he goes with the plan anyway, with the promise of root beer as a reward. After trapping Mr. Krabs and Squidward in a toilet, they open the safe containing the Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton takes it out of the safe, and Mr. Krabs begs him not to read it, telling him that there are some things in this world that aren't meant for mortal eyes. Plankton didn't care to listen, and reads out the formula with 4 ingredients: a pinch of salt, 3 teaspoons of chopped onion, a cup of love, and finally 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton. This understandably horrifies Plankton, who runs away with his relatives following him. Turns out, Krabs once again saw this coming and decided to switch the formula for a fake one. Plankton does, however, figure this out though, causing him to try again in the rest of the seasons. The next one on my list actually costs Mr. Krabs his formula, and Plankton does bring it back to the chum bucket in an interesting way. In the episode Question is Buried in Time, Krabs gets the idea to start a time capsule. Multiple people contribute to this idea, with the last item being a copy of the secret formula. Naturally, this gets Plankton interested in this, and he hatches a plan to get the bottle inside. Plankton drills the capsule and gets the formula, but he gets caught in a misunderstanding involving Squidward, who steps on him on his way. This causes Plankton to swallow the bottle, giving him a bottle-shaped figure. The episode ends with Plankton on the toilet, trying to get it out of him. It's implied that he does get it out, but by then, the formula is so damaged, it's unreadable. That wasn't the only time Plankton swallowed the formula though, as he actually eats a Krabby Patty in the episode For Here or To Go. It starts with Mr. Krabs having an important announcement. It's the first annual bun seed counting contest. For anyone who correctly guesses how many seeds there are in the sesame seed jar, wins a free Krabby Patty. Several people make guesses, each more ridiculous than the last. The next contestant is Plankton, but before he can guess, Mr. Krabs grabs him by the antenna and takes him outside. Plankton claims it's unfair and calls the bogus business bureau on him. Agents burst through the roof, along with Agent Twerp, who tells Mr. Krabs that he must accept the guesses from all customers, no matter how annoying they are. Mr. Krabs, though, is adamant about refusing to let him guess, but when Twerp threatens to close down the Krusty Krab, he reluctantly agrees. Plankton uses technology to scan the jar, and guesses 500,301. His answer turns out to be correct. and he wins the Krabby Patty. Krabs tries to stall and tries not to give it to Plankton, knowing that he will reverse engineer it, but he is forced to give it to him in the end. When the Krabby Patty is ready, Plankton wants it to go, but Mr. Krabs says that it must be dine in. Plankton stuffs the entire patty into his mouth, but Mr. Krabs tells him to swallow. Once he does, he's kicked out by Mr. Krabs into the chum bucket. Once home, Plankton climbs onto an operating table and tells Karen to remove the patty from his stomach right away, even declining anesthesia. Later, Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob sadly watch the long line at the chum bucket. Suddenly, people rush out, sick from patties they say taste like stomach acid, aspirin, and carrots. The rest of the customers flee, and Plankton asks Karen what's going on. She tells him she followed orders, revealing that she focused on his stomach contents rather than the Krabby Patty ingredients. This error was the only thing between Plankton and his beloved formula. But did you know there was a time when Plankton made an entire band to steal the formula? In the episode Krabby Road. It starts with Plankton escaping jail and returning to the chum bucket, but he's also thrown out by Karen, who calls him a loser for never succeeding in his one mission. Plankton then hears SpongeBob singing about a Krabby Patty while censoring out the ingredients with noises. Plankton asks him to sing it uncensored, but SpongeBob mistakes this as Plankton wanting him to join the band, but he rolls with it in hopes of stealing the formula. The band also gets Patrick and Squidward as members. Plankton returns with band shirts, naming their band Plankton and the Patty Stealers. Despite this, they are still oblivious to Plankton's true intentions. The band's dreams come true when Mr. Krabs lets them play at the Krusty Krab after hours. Plankton immediately starts searching for the formula, while the rest of his band rehearses. SpongeBob notices this and soon realizes that the band was just another one of Plankton's crazy schemes and becomes furious. Plankton actually opens the formula, but isn't able to read it for himself as he tries to prove his innocence. The police come and arrest Plankton for his escape, but perhaps one of Plankton's best ideas was to impersonate Sandy. In the episode, someone's in the kitchen with Sandy, but this doesn't faze Plankton. He steals the fur coat, puts it on, and goes to the Krusty Krab. Unfortunately for Plankton, not even this idea worked out. This list would not be complete without talking about the time that Plankton switched lives with Mr. Krabs in the episode The Algae's Always Greener. After failing to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula once again, Plankton decides that he is tired of eating holographic meatloaf, believing Mr. Krabs to have more of a satisfying existence. He longs to switch lives with him. Karen conveniently points out that he had just invented a transmogridifier earlier and suggests to use it. Plankton takes her advice and later finds himself waking up as Mr. Krabs. Now, wearing Mr. Krabs' outfit, Plankton looks at his nameplate reading Mr. Plankton and realizes that he has successfully entered a universe where he is, in fact, successful. His first act is to have alternate universe SpongeBob SquarePants, now as his employee, present him with 2 Krabby Patties for bun inspection. He also switches the jobs of SpongeBob and Squidward, with SpongeBob becoming the cashier and Squidward becoming the fry cook. What he doesn't realize, however, is that Mr. Krabs is a completely different person in this universe, having life circumstances closer to those that Plankton had at the beginning of the episode. He is now simply known as Krabs. He's out to steal the formula, and much like Plankton used to, he's completely naked. The crew stops Krabs, but in the process of living as the new owner, Plankton realized that he hated it, and then he hits a button, making everything go back to normal. Too bad he didn't take the formula with him though. Womp womp. But even that pales in comparison to the time SpongeBob and Squidward throw out the formula in the episode Bottle Burglars. The episode begins with SpongeBob and Squidward cleaning Mr. Krabs' office, with Mr. Krabs telling them to watch over the formula. Meanwhile, Plankton is using an invisibility helmet to steal the formula, and ends up actually stealing it when Squidward accidentally throws it out with trash. SpongeBob and Squidward then look at the security footage to see what happened, and see that Plankton had indeed stole it. They devise a plan to steal the formula back, while Plankton fails to open the formula due to there being a 12-hour time lock on it. SpongeBob and Squidward go inside the chum bucket right when Plankton finishes watching his show and goes to bed. After SpongeBob makes sure that Plankton is asleep, they face many obstacles before eventually reaching the safe. However, when SpongeBob steps on a tile, he activates a trap which hurts Squidward. When they finally reach the safe, SpongeBob tries to take it, but this causes a rocket to take SpongeBob and Squidward and blast them out of the restaurant. Mr. Krabs comes back to the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob and Squidward Squidward tell him that Plankton stole the formula. He gets very mad, but ends up stealing the formula back very easily by punching a hole through the safe outside the restaurant. Somehow, for all of his science knowledge, Plankton is never able to outsmart his mortal enemy. Perhaps he will be able to outsmart a baby version of Krabs though. Well, he certainly tries in the episode Goo Goo Gas. In here, Plankton gets the idea to turn Mr. Krabs into a baby when he hears a woman saying that she can take her baby's milk away from him and he can't do anything about it. Plankton then leads Mr. Krabs to a telephone booth, find money, where he sprays Goo Goo Gas on him, turning Mr. Krabs into a baby. SpongeBob finds baby Krabs and takes him away, but Plankton accidentally reveals to an overhearing SpongeBob that baby Krabs is actually Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob tries to take care of baby Krabs and only succeeds when he uses a stack of 20s. Meanwhile, Plankton sprays baby Krabs and SpongeBob, but Mr. Krabs is now an adult, and SpongeBob is a baby. Plankton sprays SpongeBob again, and now he's back to an adult. He realizes that he's using senior citizen spray. Plankton sprays everyone again, thinking that they'll now be too old to catch him. Once he steals a Krabby Patty, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs pursue him slowly, but then trap him by knitting a net and calling over senior citizens to hit him one by one like a piñata. Plankton then realizes that there is one ingredient that he's missing to turn people into babies. He goes to the bargain mart where he buys baby powder and then goes back to complete the experiment. Using Karen as a test subject, he gets it to work. He then returns to the Krusty Krab and sprays all over the customers, including SpongeBob, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs, and they all remain stuck as babies for the rest of the episode. Plankton is grabbed and thrown around by the babies, but sees the formula sucked on by baby Krabs. As he's about to get it though, baby Krabs repeatedly slams the bottle on Plankton, who then comes back from underneath and realizes that he just got the formula. Just as he was about to make his getaway, he realizes that baby SpongeBob had gotten ahead of his canister. The baby pulls the trigger, spraying Plankton, who now became so small he can't even be seen without a microscope. Turns out, he can't even win when everyone around him is a baby. As if switching lives wasn't enough, there is a time where Plankton made a Krabs robot in the episode Imitation Krabs, only to be caught by Mr. Krabs and thrown out. This of course gives him another idea. He gets to work, making a Krabs robot that looks just like him, but when Plankton tests it out, it fails to fool Squidward, but he bribes Squidward into being silent. He then tries to get information out of SpongeBob. What follows is a ritual that goes on for 6.5 hours, and consists of many bizarre and ridiculous feats, leaving Plankton worn out from the controlling robot Krabs. After all of this, SpongeBob still won't discuss formula, causing Plankton to explode in anger at all the things that he did, seemingly for nothing. However, the two try to convince SpongeBob that they are a genuine owner. Unable to handle the situation calmly, SpongeBob threatens both of them with a vat of tartar sauce until he gets some answers. He decides that the best way to weed out the imposter is to present the two with a quiz about the Krusty Krab. The first two questions are generic ones that anyone who has been to a restaurant could answer, which causes SpongeBob to blast him with tartar sauce and rolls him out the door in a fry basket, convinced he is the imposter. Believing Robot Krabs to be the real Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob presents him with the formula, as Plankton laughs in victory. But then SpongeBob somehow destroys Robot Krabs by dropping a penny into its coin-operated self-destruct mechanism. With only 10 seconds until its detonation, as we get closer to the #1 spot, allow me to briefly talk about one other time where Plankton came closest to the formula. The episode Frozen Face Off is where everyone in Bikini Bottom participates in a warm sled race to win $1 million. But Plankton uses the distraction to go after the Krabby Patty secret formula. He sneaks off to the Krusty Krab just before the race begins and uses a robot as his replacement in the race. When the group returns after an eventful race, they find that the Krusty Krab has been destroyed, and Plankton has stolen the formula. However, Plankton cannot get the bottle open. When Plankton expresses his frustration of not being able to open the bottle, Patrick stupidly opens the bottle, allowing Plankton to finally take the formula out. After everyone surrounds Plankton, he pretends to surrender and uses a pen to fly away out of the chum bucket. The group chases Plankton into a net trap that Plankton trapped them in above a grease pit, but he did not know about the snow mollusk that that had been a part of the race. It frees the group and starts eating Patrick's jelly beans. Plankton tries to escape, but the snow mollusk mistakes him for a jelly bean and eats him, dropping the secret formula. At the end, the formula is returned by Mr. Krabs in the process, with Karen showing no sympathy for Plankton. At the end of this list, for the last time that Plankton stole the secret formula, is none other than the legendary Spongebob SquarePants movie. In it, Plankton initiates what he calls Plan Z in order to attempt to finally obtain the Krabby Patty secret formula. He steals King Neptune's crown, sends it into Shell City, and frames Krabs for the crimes. Neptune confronts Krabs about his stolen crown and is convinced of Krabs' guilt when a hungover SpongeBob smears him. Recovering from his hangover, SpongeBob promises Neptune that he will retrieve the crown from Shell City. Neptune freezes Krabs, telling SpongeBob to return it in 6 days or his boss will be executed. After the duo leave Bikini Bottom, Plankton actually steals the formula from the frozen crabs and uses it to start selling Krabby Patties. He distributes free helmets with the Krabby Patties that brainwash customers into doing Plankton's bidding. It leads to him taking over Bikini Bottom and hiring a hitman named Dennis to prevent SpongeBob and Patrick from returning the crown. We finally see Plankton achieve all of his dreams, but the story isn't over yet. Neptune arrives to execute Krabs, but SpongeBob and Patrick return with the crown just in time. Plankton drops a mind control helmet on Neptune and surrounds SpongeBob, Patrick, and Mindy with his army of slaves, but SpongeBob uses the Goofy Goober rock to free Neptune and the citizens of Bikini Bottom. As Plankton is arrested by the police, Neptune unfreezes Krabs, who appoint SpongeBob as the manager of Krusty Krab 2. That was every time that Plankton stole the secret formula. Now, we all know that SpongeBob literally doesn't make any sense.
Holy shrimp!
Yeah, logic is the last thing that I think of when I think of SpongeBob. But what if there was real-world logic in SpongeBob? What if he could actually die from all the insane things that he's done? Today, we're going over all the times that SpongeBob should have died. Starting in the episode Shanghaired. Now, seeing a flying ghost ship would send anyone running, but for SpongeBob, it was just another Tuesday. He climbed aboard without even a second thought, and from the very start, death was basically waiting for him. He climbs onto the ship willingly, straight into the arms of a ghost who immediately burns Squidward alive. SpongeBob only realizes it's dangerous once his best friend is screaming, but it doesn't stop there. The Dutchman threatens to eat them, and their escape plan nearly kills them in the perfume department. That hallway alone should have suffocated them. Yet somehow, SpongeBob survives, only to be caught again. His final hope is 3 wishes that he gets granted, and the first 2 go horribly wrong.
Wishes? I wish we had known that earlier.
You got 2 wishes left. I wish Squidward were here to see this. Squidward!
And when it's SpongeBob's turn, he makes a smart choice, only for the Dutchman to twist and toss them into a blender. How he lived through any of that is a mystery, but getting kidnapped by the Flying Dutchman should have been a guaranteed death sentence. But this wasn't the only time SpongeBob's brains, or lack of, nearly killed him. Let's talk about the next time he almost died, this time from having an exposed brain. In the episode Scaredy Pants, SpongeBob's brain has made so many cameos that it should have killed him over 1 million times.
Come on now, SpongeBob. You need to pull yourself together.
We were the first kids on the block to get whirly brains.
But perhaps the one that should have made him drop dead is in the episode Scaredy Pants. This one starts off fairly innocent. On the evening of Halloween, SpongeBob gets bullied as the crew gets to know that he's easily scared, leading him to earning the name Spongebob Scaredy Pants. He asks Patrick for help, and they try out a bunch of tricks, but none really make anyone scared. Fed up, SpongeBob decides to use one last trick that he's had up his sleeve. He shows up at a Halloween party at the Krusty Krab, and though people were initially scared, they started laughing as soon as they realized that it was SpongeBob. But things change when the Flying Dutchman appears and get offended at SpongeBob's costume.
You scary!
I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of people who can walk around with that much of their insides exposed. He was lucky he had the ability to grow his skin back. Otherwise, he definitely should have died at the party. But it's not just SpongeBob's brain. His most favorite place in the world is constantly out to get him. Let's talk about the one time he almost died from workplace hazards. In the episode Krusty Krab training video, this episode fulfills many people's dreams to work alongside SpongeBob, but the training video casually reveals the darker sides of the Krusty Krab. The episode starts off with the Krusty Krab's backstory. It ironically began with Krabs committing fraud as a little kid. It informs us that the Krusty Krab used to be a nursing home until it got renovated into the restaurant it is today. Then it guides us through the technological advancements that are working to keep the business running smoothly. Basically, what you'd expect to find in the most ordinary restaurants. Except, Krabs has some special names for them.
This here is an advanced patty control mechanism. Here you can see our automated money handling system.
But the highlight comes when the actual training part of the episode starts. The training starts with personal hygiene, and SpongeBob isn't just told to clean his hands. He's not allowed to stop scrubbing until his hands no longer exist. On top of this, he's made to cut off any spots on his face with a pair of scissors. Then comes cleaning his workstation, and he's seen vacuuming on top of the stove. The odds of a fire hazard there is so great that SpongeBob has a better chance of surviving out of water. Everyone knows how Mr. Krabs is really cheap, but he only pays SpongeBob a penny a month. If workplace hazards don't kill him, starvation certainly should have. And that's not taking into consideration all of Plankton's evil schemes for the Krabby Patty secret formula. It's a miracle that he's able to go to work every day and come back alive. And the fact that he's even able to get enough food to survive. Speaking of eating enough, there was once a time when he swallowed an entire bomb. Yeah, we're talking about the episode Dying for Pie. It's well known that Squidward hates SpongeBob, but this episode takes that idea to a whole new level. It starts off with Squidward dreading the Employee Brotherhood Day because, well, he hates SpongeBob. But the yellow sponge is the complete opposite. Being excited to give Squidward his gift, when gifts are exchanged, Squidward is empty-handed, while SpongeBob presents him with a sweater made of his own eyelashes. Now, it's a miracle how SpongeBob got that many lashes, but Squidward's disgusted reaction makes him really upset. So upset that he actually makes a sweater from his own tears. And filled with guilt, Squidward finally acts like a good friend to SpongeBob. He takes him around, even doing dangerous acts to check everything off SpongeBob's bucket list. In the end, he takes him to see the sunset as the final item on the list, creating a wall between them to protect himself. Squidward tears up as SpongeBob says that he would be happy to die now. Luckily for him, his kindness saved him from an explosion from within. He wanted to share the pie, and hence never ate it. But this isn't the only time that Squidward almost killed SpongeBob. And this next one was nearly death by exhaustion. In the episode, Can You Spare a Dime? What started as a really kind gesture turned Squidward into a SpongeBob abuser. The episode begins with Squidward quitting his job after being accused of stealing Mr. Krabs' first dime. He didn't want to change his mind because he had big ambitions, so SpongeBob believes him after extending a kind hand if he ever needed one. When SpongeBob meets him again, Squidward had been living in a cardboard box. Feeling bad for him, SpongeBob lets him stay at his house until he can find a new job, pampering him with breakfast in bed and massages. But this would eventually spell disaster for SpongeBob. Squidward would not allow him to sleep, constantly interrupting him for stupid reasons. Still, he remains kind, even giving Gary excuses for Squidward's behavior. Months pass by, and Squidward is obviously having no intentions to stop his royal treatment from SpongeBob, not looking for new employment or trying to be a better version of himself. He becomes completely dependent on him. SpongeBob becomes a servant to Squidward, who gets as much as he can get from him. He goes as far as to clearly ignore all the hints to get a job from SpongeBob, even lying and saying that he's allergic to the job listing section of the newspaper. Eventually, a fed-up SpongeBob pushes that bed that Squidward's lying on, through the upstairs wall and all the way to the Krusty Krab. He demands that Krabs give Squidward his job back, while throwing as many dimes at Krabs as possible. Finally, at the end of his threat, SpongeBob snaps in extreme rage and fury, grabs Mr. Krabs by the throat, and lashes out at him for his cheapness. Just how much SpongeBob has been pushed to his limits is clear when the usual cheery Sponge downright threatens to kill Krabs. He shakes Krabs violently, which is what saved the day. The first dime falls out of Krabs' pants with a large coin-shaped rock, revealing that it was in his pocket the whole time. The sleep deprivation, the mental torture, and the physical exhaustion would have killed any normal person, but SpongeBob only survives because he's the main character of the show. But this isn't the only time someone worked SpongeBob to the bone, because in this next one, he almost experienced death by sleep deprivation in the episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. This was one of the most dangerous plans that Plankton ever had, because SpongeBob could have easily died in this episode. It begins with Krabs adjusting the restaurant's business hours until he sees what Plankton is up to. The Chum Bucket announced that it will be open 23 hours a day, and with how competitive Krabs is, he raced to come out on top. Krabs announced that the Krusty Krab is now a 24/7 working restaurant, and he didn't hire anyone new, of course, so the job immediately fell to SpongeBob and Squidward, who were now required to stay up through the night for working. All is going according to Plankton's plan, who wanted to get the formula out of an exhausted SpongeBob. After 10 days of nonstop service, somehow SpongeBob keeps working, and to give you an idea, the average person cannot be trusted with a stove just 3 days after no sleep. But SpongeBob is not only near a stove, he kept flipping Krabby Patties for over 240 hours. Because that didn't go according to plan, Plankton goes a step further by doing something much worse.
Krusty Krab, the restaurant that never closes. You'd like to place an order? 10,000 Krabby Patties.
Krabs, without a second thought, gives the order to him with no breaks.
1,320.
Day 23. Hey,
8,600.
Wait, what's going on?
After 43 days, SpongeBob begins to crack, cooking the Krabby Patties wrong. He gets pushed so much that the exhaustion makes him develop a fear of Krabby Patties themselves. After all of this, Plankton finally tries to take advantage of him, and a few of his tricks do not work.
Now, let's unload all that harmful information in your little yellow head.
As a last-ditch effort, he tries hypnosis, but that just ends up curing SpongeBob's fear, as all he needed was some sleep. 43 days of no sleep and constant working should have made SpongeBob fall into his beloved stove and cook like a Krabby Patty. This wasn't a one-time thing either. In the episode Graveyard Shift, Krabs does a similar thing, but in that episode, Squidward scares SpongeBob into believing that a hash-slinging slasher monster will get him. The only good thing is that he's awake for only one night, and the horror story wasn't true, but it clearly shows that Krabs will take advantage of him whenever he can. Well, this was him being a good worker. Being a driver doesn't seem to help him either. So now, let's talk about the time he almost died from a car accident. In the episode Bumper to Bumper, it's no secret that SpongeBob is a bad driver. The guy has literally taken the test over 1.2 million times.
Help, lunatic driver! SpongeBob, give me that wheel!
I got it!
His deadliest one was in the Bumper to Bumper episode from season 9. Mrs. Puff, who has been good all day until then, immediately breaks down when she sees SpongeBob.
Mrs. Puff.
And right from the get-go, it's easy to see why. SpongeBob first reverses the car, then does multiple 360-degree spins to fix his mistake, until his steering wheel breaks. Once that happened, SpongeBob has totally lost control of the car, leading him to crash through multiple obstacles. He managed to knot the road he was driving on, and even set the whole boat on fire. To top it all off, he crashed right into someone's house, leading Mrs. Puff to fail him again. But as if 6 brushes with death weren't enough, Mrs. Puff tries to keep faith in him and attempts to teach him again. This time, she took him to a real road, which went just as badly.
This isn't just any road. It's a 10-lane intertidal seaway!
Somehow, even 1.2 million times wasn't enough to pass his test. And at the end of the episode, the policeman tore up his license. So even after all that effort, poor Spongy never got what he tried so hard for. But this isn't the only time that SpongeBob almost died because of boating school. Next, we have to talk about what happened in the episode Ditchin'. Everyone is a fan of something or the other, but in this episode, SpongeBob nearly loses his life for being a fanboy. After watching an episodes of The Adventures of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, SpongeBob finds that there's a book signing from his favorite superheroes. But this makes him really upset because he has to go to boating school that day. Not wanting to damage his attendance record, he decides to ditch boating school while pretending to go to the bathroom. The plan worked out nicely, and by the next day, he got to the book signing. But when he saw that Dale, who was an ex-convict, got arrested, things started to break apart. A fish told him that Dale became a criminal after ditching class, making SpongeBob guilty. After that, he tries to go bat. This was his biggest mistake. In his hurry to go bat, he drowns in a pit of tar and nearly dies. He only gets out because of his determination to return the bathroom key to Mrs. Puff. But this could have gone either way, and he would have died by drowning. But this isn't the only time that SpongeBob's explorations nearly killed him either. In Rock Bottom, no one could have predicted that taking the wrong bus could have led to SpongeBob's death. But thanks to his plot armor, we see him surviving in some of the most dangerous habitats. The episode begins with SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally taking the wrong bus to Rock Bottom. Its residents are deep sea creatures who are not known for being merciful. They have glowing eyes, razor-sharp teeth, and even their voices are enough to send shivers down everyone's spines. The environment that surrounded these people wasn't welcoming either. It was in complete darkness, with bizarre structures and the perfect atmosphere to kill. Even the vending machines try to kill SpongeBob. He spends the whole episode alone, hungry and determined, while creatures that could have easily killed him are sneaking in the shadows. If this happened in real life, a sponge as small as him would have been swallowed in a matter of minutes. Luckily, SpongeBob survives a whole night and only gets out because of the friendly anglerfish, who helps him back to Bikini Bottom. But now, let's talk about the next near-death experience. In the episode Frankendoodle. In the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick find a harmless pencil dropped by a French artist. They play around with it, drawing whatever shapes they can think of. But it turns out there was a surprise waiting for them.
SpongeBob, your drawing's coming to life!
This gave SpongeBob an idea to prank Squidward. He draws himself, hoping that it would be a joke and good fun. The drawing became what SpongeBob called Doodle Bob, but things quickly started to go horribly wrong. It turns out to be a fight for survival, with Doodle Bob beating the pair. He only had one mission: to erase the original version of SpongeBob from existence. SpongeBob thought that this would be over when he erased his doppelganger, with the eraser on the pencil. But he couldn't be further from the truth, as he didn't do the job right. Doodle Bob redraws himself and comes after SpongeBob again. The fight only ends when SpongeBob traps Doodle Bob on a piece of paper. But that wasn't the end of Doodle Bob. He appears again in the Doodle dimension. Only this time, it was SpongeBob and Patrick who were in Doodle Bob's territory. He appears to have upgraded his skills, having the ability to create entire whole armies now, and even turn other drawings evil. The pair only get away after they tie balloons to Doodle Bob's army. Doppelgangers never seem to leave SpongeBob alone, as this next one almost causes his death. In the episode, The Cave-Dwelling Sponge. If the Flying Dutchman didn't haunt him, SpongeBob's lookalike from the prehistoric times certainly did. The episode starts really innocently, with a walk in nature, but Patrick's stupidity soon got his tongue on ice. Melting the ice got Patrick free, but it also awakened a caveman version of SpongeBob. Unaware that the new sponge was hiding in his backpack, the pair returned home, but the chaos quickly starts spreading. The cave sponge, now called Spongy Sponge, follows SpongeBob around, but his intentions were not as pure, as he causes massive property damage and even critically damages Squidward. Poor SpongeBob is blamed, taunted, and jailed for his crimes that he didn't commit. What's most terrifying in this episode is how easily people turn on the sponge they have known for years at this point. Even when Squidward saw Spongy Sponge, he couldn't tell the difference. This leads to the ancient sponge directly attacking customers. Had the truth not come out, SpongeBob would have easily gotten the death sentence for all the crimes that Spongy Sponge did. But while Patrick's stupidity got SpongeBob in this situation, it was his clumsiness that got him in another brush with death, this time almost dying from an infection. In the episode, The Splinter. The episode starts with SpongeBob accidentally throwing his spatula into the ceiling. When he tries to get it back, he falls and nearly gets critically injured from the surrounding sharp objects. His spatula saves him, but even that couldn't prevent SpongeBob's landing. He slips on some tartar sauce, causing him to drag his finger along the wooden floors, giving him a splinter. It immediately makes his thumb red and swollen. Squidward scares him into thinking he'll lose his job because of the splinter, causing SpongeBob to panic. So instead of going to the doctor, he goes to Patrick. But whatever Patrick did makes the situation worse. Eventually, the small wound became so infected that it grew as big as SpongeBob's head, making it harder to hide. Patrick also panics and says that his doctor shift is over, leaving SpongeBob alone with his troubles. He eventually runs into Krabs and Squidward again, making him fear the worst. Krabs finally does the obvious and removes the splinter, and this lets all the infection out and the wound returns to normal. But an infected wound like that is no joke. Before antibiotics came a thing, it was one of the leading causes of death, but somehow SpongeBob is healed without any medication. But while this was all underwater, his luck didn't get any better on land, because in this next one, he almost died from dehydration in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. In the climax of the movie, SpongeBob and Patrick face certain death in the gift shop, but this was no ordinary gift shop. It was a beachside one selling sea creatures as souvenirs. The diver puts both of them under the intense light of the lamp, slowly removing all the water from them. A slow, painful death with both of them not even being able to move. They accept their deaths as even SpongeBob's arm breaks off. In one of the most emotional scenes, SpongeBob believes what everyone told him, that he was just a kid who was way over his head. Realization hits that just as they arrived at the destination they were longing for, they could not achieve the goal they were set out to do. They cry, and this ends up being what actually saves them. They turn into dehydrated souvenirs as the audience cries for them, but the tear travels to the socket of the lamp, short-circuiting it and creating smoke. The smoke then turns on the sprinklers, with the lamp turned off and the sprinklers spraying life-saving water. The pair is revived. This isn't the first time we see SpongeBob dehydrated, as it also happens in the very first season. Sandy invites SpongeBob over to her house, which runs on air obviously as Sandy needs to survive, but it wasn't until the end of that scene that she realizes that she needs water to save him. But everyone can agree that the scene in the movie is probably the closest that SpongeBob has ever come to absolute death. That was all the times that SpongeBob should have died. For every loved SpongeBob character, there is always one hated by everyone. And we're gonna be starting with Mr. Krabs, who is nothing more than a greedy, cheap, and ruthless boss. Throughout the show, we see him act like more of a villain than Plankton, and unlike Patrick, he is more than fully aware of his actions. He's made his employees work thousands of hours of overtime without pay, break, or vacation, and honestly, he takes no consideration for anyone, including his own daughter, unless cold hard cash is involved. Heck, in the episode SpongeBob You're Fired, we find out that he only pays SpongeBob a nickel a day.
And it turns out that I'll save a whole nickel if I cut your salary.
Mr. Krabs, my boy, it is not the 1920s. You gotta pay SpongeBob more than that. Come on, man. How is he gonna feed his pet Gary? But to only make his greed worse, in the episode Born Again Krabs, he went too far as to almost ripping a guy's arm off over a penny and sold SpongeBob for 62 cents. Mr. Krabs even scared Plankton so much that he was this close to offing himself. In the episode One Course Meal, after finding out Plankton has a crippling fear of whales, Mr. Krabs gets a very messed up idea to get back at Plankton. But instead of just using his newfound knowledge as a quick scare tactic or maybe a one-time prank, Mr. Krabs decides to mentally destroy him. He literally dresses up as his own daughter in a terrifying whale costume and messes with Plankton in his own house. All this causes Plankton to lose sleep, and my boy Plankton does not look good. After many more sleepless nights and literal nightmares about Pearl eating him, Plankton is so tormented by the constant fear of these whale attacks that he tries to unalive himself by laying in the road and waiting for a car to run him over. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is celebrating this in his office. Mr. Krabs is out here using straight up CIA torture techniques. Who is the worst character in SpongeBob? Mr. Krabs. Tie between Patrick and Mr. Krabs, specifically season 6 through 8. Both characters become unlikable assholes, TBH, and seem to ruin certain episodes. Overall though, despite the hate, I personally think Mr. Krabs is probably one of the funniest characters in the show, even though he has some very apparent character flaws, and meanwhile, at the same time is breaking hundreds of OSHA violations. But those flaws are just that and can't be ignored. So while Mr. Krabs may be hated for being a greedy and selfish boss, SpongeBob is loved for his endless optimism and a work ethic that puts most adults to shame. SpongeBob is the kind of character that radiates pure joy, whether he's catching jellyfish, annoying Squidward, or flipping the perfect Krabby Patty. He always approaches life with a contagious, positive attitude, especially during the earlier seasons. It's incredibly easy to say the show used to be great without saying why. SpongeBob especially is one of my favorite characters, because he was an adult with childish interests, rather than the child portrayed on screen now in modern SpongeBob seasons. SpongeBob held a job, went to driving school, and is a homeowner who takes care of a pet. He was a multi-factured adult character. He still cried and blew some bubbles, but his crying was justified. SpongeBob blew bubbles, but he also played the ukulele, he watched TV, and threw house parties. He wasn't a nuisance, and if he was, he didn't know it. Bro was just living his best life. He's the kind of guy who gets excited for work on his day off, turns chores into adventures, and makes something as simple as a literal cardboard box come to life with his
imagination.
His iconic catchphrases,
Another day, another nickel.
goofy laugh, and unwavering loyalty to his friends has cemented him as not just the star of the show, but as one of the most loved cartoon characters ever. But while SpongeBob is loved by pretty much everyone, the same cannot be said about his best friend, Patrick. Now, don't get me wrong, Patrick definitely used to be one of the most loved SpongeBob characters, especially in the earlier seasons. But nowadays, Patrick's character has been completely flanderized, and anything that made him once loved is completely gone. Patrick started as someone who was obviously really dumb.
What kind of place is this?
But he wasn't dumb in an annoying way, and his character actually bounced off SpongeBob really well. Take the episode Life of Crime from season 2. This is just a prime example of peak Patrick. He's really funny, but he's not nearly as annoying as in recent episodes like the Nitwitting. And it's very clear that anything that was lovable about the old Patrick is completely gone. Later season Patrick, after the original writers left, Patrick Star turned into an asshole, especially to SpongeBob. Exactly. The newer season Patrick is just an inconsiderate asshole and a fake friend. I feel like he doesn't deserve his own show. If the writers kept Patrick the same, I would say he deserves his own show. All of this is so bad that it's even caused people to go as far as making downfall videos about him. But while Patrick may have had one of the biggest fall-offs in SpongeBob history, the same cannot be said about SpongeBob's pet, Gary. Gary is a loyal and consistent character who always sticks by SpongeBob's side. And you may be asking, why am I yapping about a literal pet snail in this video? Well, that's because his character's actually way deeper than that, and that's what makes Gary so loved. And we especially see this in the episode A Pal for Gary, which, by the way, is the worst rated SpongeBob episode of all time, and that's because SpongeBob is absolutely insufferable in this episode. And his arrogance here really shows when he buys a friend to try to keep Gary company when he's away. But what started as a good intention ends up as a giant killer monster who wants to murder Gary. But even through all this, despite just being a tiny snail, Gary perseveres and tries to take down the giant beast, which SpongeBob appropriately gave the name Puffy Fluffy. But when SpongeBob gets kidnapped and trapped in Puffy Fluffy's mouth, Gary really locks in and goes full on cowboy mode, absolutely destroying Puffy Fluffy. He always has SpongeBob's back. He's loyal, lovable, and will do anything to protect SpongeBob. SpongeBob, and that's what makes him so loved. Plus, he's like a tiny pet snail. What? Do you hate animals? How could you possibly hate this little guy? But while I assume most people love Gary, their opinions could not be any more different about Flats the Flounder. Flats made his infamous appearance in the episode The Bully, where he transferred to Mrs. Puff's boating school with one goal: to kick SpongeBob's butt.
Hi, SpongeBob. I'm gonna kick your butt.
But here's the thing, Flats wasn't funny, he wasn't deep, he was just mean. Fans found him unnecessarily aggressive, bringing the kind of real-world schoolyard bullying that doesn't really go with Bikini Bottom's usual goofy energy. And no matter how many times SpongeBob tried to befriend him, Flats stuck to his mission, turned the episode into a weird game of how long can you watch SpongeBob get stalked before it gets uncomfortable. And spoiler alert, it's not long. His lack of humor, depth, or even a decent reason for hating SpongeBob left fans annoyed. I think he's just a jerk. I think he's a stupid guy who thinks beating someone's butt is fun. Even in a town full of villains, Flats stood out. Not as an evil bad guy, but as someone who's just straight up annoying. But while Flats might be hated by most people for just being a straight up bully, fans can't seem to get enough of Doodle Bob. He made his first appearance in the episode Frankendoodle, and it starts with a dude on a boat dropping a pencil into the ocean, which conveniently lands right next to SpongeBob and Patrick. And when they draw with it, the things they draw actually come to life. So somehow they got their hands on a magic pencil. And then predictably, they go around drawing a bunch of things, like a little version of Squidward, a money trap for Squidward, and even a replica of SpongeBob, who immediately goes and beats up Squidward. And the noises this thing makes are definitely something. So they go chasing him around to get the pencil back, until they end up back at SpongeBob's house. But while in here fighting, they realize that his biggest weakness is getting trapped in paper. So SpongeBob takes advantage of that and traps him in a book, framing him and keeping him as a little souvenir in the house. One of the greatest episodes ever. Absolute legend. If she says meoy, marry her. But while everyone loves Doodle Bob, everyone seems to collectively hate Bubble Bass. He was introduced in the episode Pickles, and he immediately made waves in the community for all the wrong reasons. His defining moment in this episode is literally gaslighting SpongeBob all over a sandwich. In this episode, he ordered a Krabby Patty, claiming it was missing pickles. And this sent my boy SpongeBob into a full-blown existential crisis, with him literally forgetting how to do basic tasks, all because he's sad he allegedly messed up one Krabby Patty. All the while, the entire time, Bubble Bass was hiding the pickles under his tongue. It was the ultimate troll move, not just because it was rude, but it turns out that the whole time, he didn't even like pickles. Why do characters like Bubble Bass and Flats the Flounder come out to just mess with my boy SpongeBob? Like, what did he ever do wrong to any of them? And that's what I think makes these specific characters so hated. They're kind of just thrown into the plot to be the bully. Also, he apparently steals a lot of random stuff too. But while Bubble Bass is generally hated for just being kind of a jerk, the same cannot be said about Squidward. Squidward is the character that the show really needs to balance out SpongeBob and Patrick shenanigans. Like, imagine if they didn't have Squidward in their life to mess with, and how boring the show would be. It would just turn into them being idiots for the entire episode with no plot. And we've seen in episodes like The Nitwitting how that turns out. When the show first aired, Squidward was supposed to just be the grumpy neighbor that everyone kind of hated and rolled their eyes at. And any kid watching the show might think that. But as you get older, you start to relate to Squidward more, and almost feel bad for the dude and all he has to go through on a daily basis. This man just wants to work his dead-end job at the Krusty Krab, play his clarinet, and be left alone. Is that too much to ask? Well, apparently, yes. Especially when SpongeBob and Patrick live right next door. But he doesn't spend his time only yelling at SpongeBob. He's an artist, in his own mind, a musician, kind of, and someone who deep down really does care. Only if it benefits him. And in the episode Love That Squid, we see that Squidward's girlfriend Squilvia acts just like Squidward. So maybe it's in Squid DNA to act really grumpy and selfish. Many fans relate to his sarcasm, dry humor, and his struggle between wanting peace and secretly craving connection. Plus, when Squidward does get his rare wins, like in Band Geeks, it's pure magic. So yeah, Squidward may be a grumpy old man in many people's eyes, but in Bikini Bottom, he's the only one you can count on to keep it real and give it to you how it is. And there's something cool about that. But while many people like Squidward, I don't know a single person who likes Pearl. I mean, seriously, have you ever heard anyone say, yeah, Pearl's my favorite character? Me neither. And online, people don't really like her either. She's a total POS. She's a textbook 12-year-old girl with low self-esteem. She's loud, bratty, and her entire personality revolves around her being a spoiled teenager who constantly complains. And honestly, if that's what the show writers are going for, I guess they're doing a good job, but personally, I don't really know any SpongeBob fans who like Pearl. And a good example of her just being kind of annoying is in the episode Whale of a Birthday. And in this episode, Mr. Krabs tries to throw her a party, and Pearl spends the entire time whining and being ungrateful. But to be fair, this counts more as one of Mr. Krabs' worst moments in the series, because he totally cheaped out on her birthday, literally giving her a cardboard cake. Like, who does that? A cardboard cake? There's not much more to say about her because in all honesty, she's just kind of a boring character. But while Pearl is just kind of a brat and is really annoying to watch, it's pretty hard to hate Sandy. She's smart, tough, and she's actually the only air-breathing mammal in Bikini Bottom, which already makes her pretty unique. And to make her even more interesting, she is an absolutely genius inventor. Whether she's karate chopping with SpongeBob, inventing rocket ships, or a goo-filled Krabby Patty that turns everyone into Krabby Patty monsters, Sandy proves that she's a force to be reckoned with. But it's not just her strength that makes her lovable, it's her heart, Sandy's loyalty to her friends, and her great sense of adventure that gives her layers that go beyond the stereotypical tough girl trope. I think Sandy deserves more love, and the love for Sandy in the community really shows, because the creators of SpongeBob decided to make a whole movie focused around Sandy. Sandy's blend of brains, strengths, and southern charm makes her one of the most beloved characters in all of SpongeBob. Plus, who else could rock a astronaut suit and a flower on their helmet? But comment down below what your 5 most hated and most loved SpongeBob characters are. SpongeBob SquarePants has been on the air for over 25 jellyfishing years, and with all this time, the creators are bound to make at least a few changes to the animation style here and there, whether it be adding a few holes to SpongeBob, or even a complete change to the entire art style. So today, I wanted to go over every time SpongeBob changes its animation style, from the pilot all the way to 3D animated SpongeBob. But before we get to that, let's go from the earliest versions of SpongeBob, and then work our way back to some of the freaky ones. In the beginning, it used the cell art style, a style where artists drew and painted on transparent sheets and layered them over the backgrounds. Although, despite what many people thought, this wasn't the traditional way cell styles were made. SpongeBob was actually made using digital apps such as Toons, back then called US Animation, to replicate the cell style by making the colors slightly softer and duller, making them look like someone took crayons and sketched out a sponge with a face. They did this so the animation process could be easier and quicker, because instead of drawing on paper, then transferring the transparent sheets and hand painting them, they could just draw it and let the software replicate it for them. It was also 1999, aka ancient Rome, and studios like Disney were moving out of the traditional cell style, making it overall outdated. But this next change is straight up disgusting, vile, and weird. You'll be watching a normal SpongeBob scene, and then out of nowhere, bam, you'll get hit with one of these absolutely vile close-up shots. Like, every single hair, sweat drop is suddenly in your sight of view. It can happen while you're eating too, and literally, SpongeBob has gotten complaints about this in the past. They usually happen when something intense is going on, like when SpongeBob gets a splinter, or when he's crying so hard that his face warps. And the close-up just makes it look so much worse than it has to. The detail is way too much on purpose, and it's like they straight up want you to go, what am I even looking at right now? What's cool is that a lot of these were actually hand painted, and not drawn like the rest of the episode. Some of them look like legit oil paintings, meaning the artist have to sit there and draw every single frame of SpongeBob's crust and oils. Yeah, I really can't blame people for complaining to the creators now, though it's most likely done to get people talking about the show. You know, sometimes it's easy to forget that this was all hand painted. I was never gonna asleep anyway. But then SpongeBob released a video game on Nickelodeon's website, and it was something completely different from what people were used to seeing. About 99% of you are probably too young to have even played it, but let me explain. This was not the bright, detailed SpongeBob from the show. Instead, he looked incredibly low detail, almost like something you would expect from a computer game made in 1990. Everything had its pixelated, blocky look to it, yet somehow you could instantly tell it was SpongeBob, despite how simple it looked. The art style actually matched the resolution, and the style of the early show surprisingly well for its time. The gameplay itself, though, was pretty basic, but in a charming way. What's crazy is that the game is actually still available to play today. If you search for it online on sites like itch.io, people love going back to play these games, not just for nostalgia, but because of how unique SpongeBob looked in them. It's almost hard to imagine if SpongeBob actually looked like this in the show. Chances are, a lot of people wouldn't have been as hooked, but in the form of a quick, simple online game, it worked perfectly. Outdated or not, fans remember it, and it remains one of those weird little pieces of SpongeBob history. Speaking of outdated, a character that literally looked like SpongeBob from 1940, Doodle Bob, was introduced. Doodle Bob was one of the most popular variants of SpongeBob, being turned into memes and even being remade 18 years later in season 12. Aside from that, the Frankendoodle episode was actually a pretty genius idea. But now, let's look into the first major change. Around season 4, the animation style changed a lot. Since they took a break and worked on the Spongebob SquarePants movie, obviously they had to come back absolutely cooking. When they released their first episode of season 4, it was obvious that this art style made the characters a lot glossier. Some fans even described some of the characters in the scenes as being rubbery or bouncy. This occurred because starting in season 4, SpongeBob switched fully to digital art. No more digital cell art. They drew everything using digital paintbrushes. Although many people thought this was going to change everything in the show for the better, it wasn't necessarily as great of a change as a lot of people say. The glossiness was actually just the saturation bleeding into people's eyes, and the bounciness was just a lean towards their way of being funny. Then after that, in 2007, SpongeBob went through another small change that polished up the characters even more and made things look even more fresh. The lighting was improved, giving certain scenes a natural look, and the underwater animations felt a tad bit smoother, and the backgrounds now had better gradients that made them look more vibrant and detailed. It wasn't a massive overhaul, but it was enough to give the show slightly more of a modern feel. This update was mostly worked on in the background, so it's kind of the thing that you might not have noticed unless you compared older episodes side by side with the newer one. Some fans picked up on it right away, pointing out that the colors had certain effects, like light rays underwater looked more polished. It was subtle, but it gave the show a small visual boost without changing the core style that people adored. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a groundbreaking change, but it did its job well. The brighter colors and improved gradients kept the show from looking outdated as animation advanced. It was simply one of those quiet changes that helped SpongeBob stay visually appealing while keeping the same feeling that it had since the very beginning. At the end of the day, it just modernized animation and kept it fresh looking, which you will see later in this video would backlash a lot. But nothing could top this next change. Even though it only appeared for 2 episodes, it was on a completely different level compared to anything they've ever done before. The crazy part is that it took the crew almost an entire year to make each one. A whole year just for 1 episode. And honestly, every second of work paid off, because It's a SpongeBob Christmas ended up being some of the most beloved episodes in the eyes of so many fans. People might rip the new SpongeBob seasons, but they can't deny that this was still absolutely spectacular. I remember wanting to watch this exact special every Christmas. Something about the animation just made it the best. And honestly, I think they can do some of this animation for certain episodes. That would be cool. And the wildest part is that the entire thing was made the old-fashioned way. No shortcuts, and no relying on the faster, more modern techniques that other companies were leaning on. Every shot was crafted with that hands-on, frame-by-frame approach that you rarely see anymore. It gave the whole thing this unique charm and authenticity that just hits different, and that's why people still talk about it years later. But while they used an older way to animate these episodes, that doesn't mean that they used an old way to record it, because as HD got introduced to the world, everything changed in animation. We got better pixels and brighter colors, and this led to better shows overall. all. So SpongeBob got with the times and decided to switch to HD. And I can't blame them. I wouldn't want to keep showing people a sponge in 360p and say that I graded that. Come on, season 9 episode 1 was the first of its kind. And it was the first ever episode to be fully in 1080p with a 16:9 aspect ratio. The episode overall had better visuals and brighter colors. This made everything about the show even better for both the viewers and the animators. The resolution made it more visually pleasing for the viewer, but also easier for the animators to add motion blur and other effects. Some fans loved it, and some fans hated it, and some described it as disturbing. After all, it was their first time seeing a normal SpongeBob episode in 1080p. It's like putting glasses on for the first time. Although some episodes after that were aired in 720p or 360p in a 1:1 aspect ratio, it wasn't the last 1080p episode, because as you'll see later in this video, things are about to get a whole lot crazier. After that, SpongeBob SquarePants had a major change in 2015. After the Spongebob movie, Sponge Out of Water, the show started getting a more cartoonish and exaggerated animation style. This made it look more squishy and stretchy than before, giving it a more cartoonish vibe, and making it more appealing and interesting. But around the same time, things took a bit of a strange turn. SpongeBob SquarePants just started season 9 with its first episode, and suddenly, people were pointing out that something felt different, and it wasn't the big HD upgrade that we talked about earlier. Some swore the characters were blinking more often, others thought proportions looked a little off, and a few even said everything seemed kind of jiggly. Yeah, I know, it sounds absolutely vile, but that's what they said, not me. Still, once you get past the weird observations and finally grow up, these actual changes were pretty neat. They leaned into a more exaggerated and cartoonish style, which gave the animation a bit more energy and personality. It wasn't creepy or unsettling, just a lot more active. Faces stretched out a little further when characters reacted, movements felt looser, and the whole thing had a nice bounce to it that gave the scenes a lot more action. And it only gets crazier when SpongeBob makes such a small change that only affects SpongeBob's pores. Pretty much, starting in around season 12, they did this subtle texture boost, which made certain shots look a little bit cleaner. What's interesting is how this was all achieved with layered brushes, which sounds super technical for something that ends up being so small, but it just goes to show how much effort gets put into even the tiniest details in animation. It's obvious they care enough to tweak and improve things when longtime viewers won't catch it. And sure, maybe it's not groundbreaking, but it adds up. But this next change is straight up diabolical. You see, the people behind SpongeBob had supposedly been cooking behind the scenes to make a huge overhaul for the upcoming movie, but instead of making a good change, they literally decided to change the entire animation style by going from a nostalgic 2D drawn style that they've kept for over 2 decades to going to this, and literally everyone hated it. And no, I'm not talking about Sponge Out of Water. I'm talking about the horribly animated CGI 3D animated SpongeBob from Sponge on the Run. I mean, just imagine someone who watches SpongeBob every day back in 2010, gets into a coma, and then wakes up to see this. That would be crazy. This 3D version of SpongeBob looks really different compared to his normal style. His body has this really smooth texture, which makes him have no charm at all, making his skin look like a literal rubber duck that you'd give to a toddler. This version of SpongeBob was just focused on being as corporate as possible. In 2D, his expressions can go crazy, but in 3D, it just falls flat. Bikini Bottom in 3D is super detailed, but it feels like it has no personality whatsoever. The show's style always had this energy where the animation looked so undetailed that it made it 10 times more fun to watch, but this one feels way more forced, like it's trying way too hard to be absolutely pixel perfect. A lot of the humor in SpongeBob comes from how weird the characters look, and in this style, that just does not happen the way we're used to. It's not the worst thing ever, but it really does not have the same personality that people loved about SpongeBob. With all these changes, obviously, SpongeBob will never be seen the same again. Some people were starting to kind of give up on SpongeBob. It wasn't really a cartoon anymore. It was kind of just a bland corporation. Instead of trying to make kids laugh, it was just SpongeBob. There was nothing special about the show anymore. just another cartoon. But somehow, in some way, they managed to prove us wrong. SpongeBob SquarePants decided to hit the rewind button. So around seasons 14 and 15, SpongeBob SquarePants did something about it. They ever so slightly went back to their old style. Not a full-on throwback to season 5, but definitely some clear nods to the early 2010 style that a lot of fans really loved. It was like the show was taking a deep breath after years of being way too modernized, and trying to find a balance again. One of the most drastic things you'll notice is how the lines around the characters got thicker. It's like they wanted everything to feel more hand-drawn, like the Cell style we talked about earlier. Honestly, it made the whole thing feel a lot more personal and like it had soul, less like it was made by a random digital app. The characters also stopped bouncing and stretching so much, and the effects were toned way down. Now, all the characters move way more natural, like they're actually living underwater, living in Bikini Bottom. Their facial expressions also changed a bit. Instead of constantly changing every frame into some weird face, the characters would hold onto an expression for longer. It gave you, as the viewer, some time to actually breathe and take in the mushy pores on SpongeBob's face. Ew. Anyways, the overall tone of the show got completely slowed down a bit. It wasn't this non-stop corporation trying to get viral anymore. The new style felt like a break from all that. Like the show was remembering why it was so great in the first place. Fun characters, simple jokes, and a Bikini Bottom that actually felt real for once. Even though they were still using digital animation, it's not like it was much different from the old style.